On a quiet night, there is a rich man living in a luxurious apartment. He is sitting in the living room accompanied by high-class meat and also expensive-looking wine. With hand movements that seem authoritative, he uses the knife in his right hand and cuts his meat, then uses the fork in his left hand to bring the piece of meat to his mouth. He is Kamaba Ritoku, a 35-year-old man and still single. He is the type of person who truly enjoys and even chooses to live alone. Because of that, he chooses to live alone luxuriously. According to him, living with someone or a life partner, he always has to adjust himself or give in, which leads to their relationship ending midway. But it's different if he is alone. He can spend money as he pleases, spend time as he pleases, but the most important thing is that he doesn't have to worry about prohibitions from his partner. And that's also the reason why he chooses not to marry. Then, with a life principle like that, he lives his life in solitude until he finally dies alone. But even so, he lives in satisfaction, so he has no regrets at all. But when he opens his eyes and thinks he has moved to another realm, he is very surprised when he realizes that he is in a white room with two people in front of him. The first is a man with long hair and all white clothes, and the second is a man with a cloth covering his head and remaining silent. Yes, Ritoku meets them who call themselves gods. The man in all white clothes suddenly chatters, or more precisely protests about Ritoku who ends up dying alone. He emphasizes that if only Ritoku had a life partner, then he wouldn't die alone. Hearing that, Ritoku can only sit there with an expression full of surprise and his mouth agape. Even before he has a chance to answer, the white-clothed god immediately changes his tone from protest to a tone that provides a solution. While embracing the black-clothed god beside him, the white-clothed god explains that this black-clothed god, or hit origami, has taken an interest in Ritoku, who also likes solitude, and this hit origami god will also reincarnate Ritoku's soul into his world. A name that is quite quirky for a god, but even though his name is quirky, this hit origami god is serious in his words. He even goes so far as to grant or give a skill that Ritoku wants to live his second life. Because of getting that facility, Ritoku only asks for one thing, namely he asks for skills that he can use to live alone. Hearing that this hit origami god only with a nod of his head, he has granted it. The white-clothed god explains what skills are given by that hit origami god. He explains that the skills obtained by Ritoku, such as healthy body, all-element affinity, swordsmanship, martial arts, and magic tool craftsman's knowledge. Even though he has mentioned those 5 skills, the white-clothed god furrows his brow in confusion. He with a curious tone asks Ritoku whether Ritoku is sure enough with these 5 simple skills, because there are still many other much stronger skills. Ritoku then answers clearly that he doesn't care because what he targets in his second life is the same life as before, namely living alone luxuriously. With that, Ritoku becomes more determined. No matter where he is, he will do everything his own way. Hearing that, the hit origami god grins proudly, as if he has just found something very valuable and interesting. And with that, Ritoku's reincarnation process begins. Ritoku opens his eyes and finds himself in a large room that looks luxurious with a classic noble style. Ritoku still hasn't realized that he is now a baby. He tries to move his hand with his flat face, which of course is very contrary to a baby's natural behavior. Ritoku just realizes that he is now truly reincarnated into a new world. Looking ahead, there is a couple talking in front of him. Seeing them, Ritoku is sure that they are his parents. When Ritoku is understanding his own situation, suddenly his body is lifted by his new mother, which surprises Ritoku himself. When his mother with a cute smile and pokes Ritoku's chubby cute cheek, that's when he realizes that he is now a baby, but his soul is 35 years old. Truly an experienced baby, Ritoku tries to protest. But because his body is still a baby, he can only make unclear sounds. And that actually makes his parents misunderstand it as a happy reaction. And yes, Ritoku ends up being carried and played with by his parents. Even though annoyed and irritated, Ritoku has no other choice but to accept it. Even in his heart, he hopes to the hit origami god to make him skip this childhood period. His parents smile happily at Ritoku, but Ritoku puts on an uncomfortable face expression. Ritoku feels that if days like this continue, he could die from stress himself. But when his father notices Ritoku's face expression, he misunderstands it. Innocently, his father asks his wife whether they need to change his diaper. Hearing his father's question, Ritoku immediately puts on a flat expression because he is so shocked. When Ritoku is placed in his crib, Ritoku panics greatly. He strongly refuses to have his diaper changed. Even when his father's hand is about to remove his diaper, Ritoku's hand immediately grabs one of his fingers angrily, trying to convey his intention. But his father considers it a cute reaction and smiles happily, and continues anyway. A mental battle where sanity, self-esteem, and shame are at stake. As if one-on-one is not enough in that mental battle, suddenly his mother joins in speaking happily that after changing his diaper, Ritoku will be breastfed by her. Ritoku's eyes immediately widen in surprise because now it's 2 against 1. An unfair battle and a hellish life for Ritoku continues until he is 8 years old. When Ritoku has reached the age of 8, he always spends his time in his room. Not exaggerated, his room now looks like a researcher's room, where there is a bookshelf with many books arranged and neatly organized on the floor. There is even a work desk and various items on another table. Not long after, footsteps are heard from outside. It is Ritoku's father named Lesta Rulin. Seeing Ritoku's room door open, he decides to greet his son. While entering, he greets Ritoku with his name in this world, namely Jillik Rulin. He asks what Jillik is doing now. Hearing that, he turns and answers that he is now drawing a blueprint for his new magic tool. Jillik realizes that he is reincarnated into a fantasy world where magical creatures and magic exist. A typical magic world like in novels, and things like adventurers and dungeons also exist. Therefore, things like magical items or magic tools also exist. Even magical items are similar to household appliances, but in terms of usability, magic items or tools in general in this world have very poor quality compared to non-magical household appliances. That's why when he heard the explanation about this world from the gods before, he already intended to make magic tools similar to those in his original world in order to live relaxed and alone. And that's why he also asked the gods for a skill named Magic Tool Craftsman's Knowledge. Moreover, the Rulin family is a family involved in the world of magic tools. And this has been arranged by the hit origami god. Hearing Jillik, who is making a blueprint, his father approaches him with a proud smile. Thinking that his son has the same interest as the family's main job as a magic tool researcher. Innocently, he asks what kind of tool his son is designing. Jillik innocently answers that the tool he is designing is called a refrigerator, a box that can release cold energy inside it. He wants to make this tool to store food for a very long time. Hearing the detailed explanation, and also seeing his very detailed blueprint drawing, makes his father freeze there. Jillik explains again that most food in summer doesn't last long, so drying food or preserving it by salting or something like that so that food can last long. But if fresh food can be maintained for a year, then the amount of food that can be made also increases from usual. Hearing that explanation makes his father extremely surprised until his mouth agape. He didn't expect to hear such far thinking from his 8-year-old son. Without caring about his pride as the head of the family, Lesta immediately shouts in panic and calls his wife to come to this room for a moment. On the other hand, Jillik smiles proudly because in his previous life, eating sessions were times he really enjoyed until it took quite a long time to finish his food. Therefore, he decided to make a refrigerator first so that he can enjoy his time alone later. Not long after, Jillik's mother named Mira Rulin arrives and looks at the blueprint paper made by Jillik with a slightly surprised expression. She, with a tone of disbelief and also a bit surprised, asks her husband whether this blueprint was made by their son. Lesta nods, confirming it, and then comments on Jillik's blueprint that but with this magic circuit made by Jillik, the amount and duration of the cold energy released by the ice magic stone is something that needs to be reconsidered. Hearing that with a slightly surprised tone, Jillik answers that according to him from the beginning, cold temperature has a natural property that descends from top to bottom due to density differences. So he feels there is no problem with the cold temperature being weaker than expected. Hearing an explanation equivalent to a researcher's thinking, now the number of people freezing increases to 2. With expressions of surprise, confusion, but also sadness because he can lose to his own son, his father is silent while staring at the blueprint. On the other hand, his mother smiles proudly and comments with an enthusiastic tone that apparently that's why the position of the ice magic stone in his son's blueprint is placed at the top inside the refrigerator. Hearing that, Jillik comments that even so, he wants to store food in frozen condition. Therefore, he wants to increase the efficiency of his magic circuit. Jillik starts to sink into his thoughts and chatters about the possibilities that occur from changes in the magic circuit he uses, like whether using 2 magic stones and connecting his magic circuit in series will work as he wants. But he also has to think about the energy consumption of the magic stone too. Therefore, the first thing to do is to review his magic circuit again. On the other hand, his parents look quite surprised and in disbelief hearing all those explanations and words coming out of their son's mouth. Suddenly his father comments with an enthusiastic tone and shouts that Jillik is a genius. Even his mother also comments with a tone full of surprise that Jillik's idea just now is extraordinary, even too extraordinary alias beyond reason. Hearing those sudden comments, of course makes Jillik very surprised, like just hearing an explosion right behind his back, because he who is used to silence now suddenly becomes noisy by his parents' voices. Lesta, who usually has a gentle and friendly nature, now looks very excited like a child who just got the toy he wants. While holding Jillik's blueprint, he comments that this intelligence at his age of 8, all this can only be explained by a genius. On the other hand, Mira for some reason grins proudly and comments that this refrigerator thing will definitely sell very well. Seeing his parents' behavior makes Jillik only furrow his brow while putting on an expression full of surprise and discomfort. Because of the noise, the servants in their residence peek from the door gap. One of the peeking servants comments with a calm tone that in this room their master looks very lively. Another servant comments with a surprised tone because hearing their master's conversation that the explanation is way too great. Another servant explains to the servant who commented calmly that the young master has made a new magic tool. Hearing that, the calm servant's expression immediately changes to very surprised when he just realizes it. Even the previously surprised servant comments again that their young master is a genius, but also feels a bit scary. The servant who explained earlier nods in agreement and understands, then comments that something like this is indeed hard to believe, especially since their young master's age is just 8 years old. His mother immediately hugs Jillik while saying proudly that Jillik's idea will change the world. His father also comments with a proud tone that their future is promising even greater than that. On the other hand, Jillik, who is suddenly hugged by his mother, puts on his surprised expression and also feels uncomfortable, because he who is used to being alone feels this warm atmosphere is very awkward. But after a while, and still being hugged by his mother, in his heart Jillik feels that an awkward atmosphere like this is okay to feel once in a while. A few days later, Jillik spends his time, as usual, in his room with books surrounding him. He is still thinking about optimizing his magic circuit, which turns out to be more difficult than he imagined. Jillik chooses to make something at his young age, so that he can have more time. Moreover, he can also learn many things for his future, of course to get his peaceful solo life. Jillik smiles proudly because everything is going according to plan, but suddenly the voices of his 2 younger siblings appear in the room, which immediately makes Jillik's smile disappear. With her cheerful face, the second sibling named Ilya Rulin invites Jillik to play together. Beside her, the youngest sibling named Alto Rulin only nods with his flat expression. For a moment, Jillik glances at them, but he immediately turns his face, trying to ignore them. Unexpectedly, Ilya immediately pulls her brother's clothes emotionally while calling him. That makes Jillik himself surprised and panicked, so he asks her to stop. Jillik then explains that he is busy improving his magic tool. Therefore, he asks Ilya to play with Alto only. Ilya immediately throws a tantrum and refuses strongly, while saying that she wants to play with her brother. Beside her, Alto only smiles slightly while still nodding in agreement with his sister. Ilya, with a tone almost crying, says that Jillik is always like this. Even when she invites him to play, Jillik always runs away with the excuse of being busy reading books or practicing. Hearing that fact, Jillik is silent for a moment. He admits all the things his sister said. Because feeling sorry, he stands from his chair, and while smiling slightly, he extends his hand and asks what game they will do today. Hearing that, his 2 siblings' eyes immediately sparkle happily. With full enthusiasm, even like inviting a fight, Ilya answers that she wants to play tag. And like a machine that has just been turned on again, Alto finally makes a sound, and while smiling slightly, he answers that he wants to play hide and seek. In the end, Jillik really accompanies his 2 siblings to play. He feels that taking care of his 2 siblings is also one of the duties of the eldest brother. This also reminds him of his sibling in his previous life, where when he still lived with his parents, at that time he also always felt disturbed because he couldn't do anything he wanted, and who would have thought he would experience the same thing in his second life. But instead of playing outside the room, his 2 siblings immediately start their game right in Jillik's still messy room. Realizing that, Jillik panics greatly because in his room there are still many books and important materials for his project. Naughty siblings. Time passes. At the academy in the capital, Jillik now enters the academy and is undergoing sparring with his classmate. With a wooden sword in his hand, the teacher who becomes the referee then starts their sparring. Jillik's opponent immediately charges at him enthusiastically when he feels his slash is fast enough to hit Jillik, but the reality is the opposite. Jillik easily avoids his attack and even jumps behind him quickly, to the point it looks like disappearing just like that. But when just realizing Jillik's presence, who is already behind him, his opponent is late in reacting. As a result, when he just turns and is about to counterattack, his movement is immediately broken by Jillik, who has targeted his opponent's wooden sword grip. His hit is hard enough to weaken his opponent's grip, and his sword is thrown. Even his opponent shakes his hand in pain due to the hit that doesn't directly hit his hand. Because not wanting to lose, his opponent then uses another attack to defeat Jillik. Yes, his opponent now uses a magic attack with his specialty in fire attribute, but when about to release his fire magic attack, Jillik is also ready to use his fire magic. But instead of one magic, Jillik uses all attribute magic with his innocent face, like wind, fire, earth, water, even light and also darkness. Seeing that beyond reason event makes his opponent's eyes widen with mouth agape and his trembling legs. Likewise with the teacher, who becomes the referee, immediately shouts to stop the sparring, while his opponent freezes there in confusion, but also still afraid. On the other hand, Jillik, who looks panicked and also surprised, is now surrounded by girls his age. Even his teacher, who sees Jillik's potential, asks him whether Jillik ever has the intention to become a hunter or a knight in the future. Innocently and clearly, Jillik answers that he will never have such intention. After returning from the academy, Jillik eats with his family as usual. Again, suddenly, Jillik declares to his family members that he has no intention to marry in the future. And yes, again they all freeze because, surprised as well as confused, his father tries to persuade his son to marry, considering Jillik is the eldest son who automatically will be the heir to this family position. His father says that there should be many types of girls in the academy and Jillik must have someone he likes there. Without waiting, Jillik immediately answers clearly that he doesn't have one. Cold sweat starts to come out of his father's face because, panicked, he then asks again, maybe Jillik chooses to like the same gender. Jillik sighs because his father thinks too far like that. He then explains that that's not what he means, he just doesn't have interest in that. Yes, the loss of his interest in marriage is still the same as he felt in his previous life too. He remembers clearly the memory in his past, where Ritoku still had a partner. But everything ended messily when Ritoku himself seemed to ignore his own partner, to the point his partner approached him and protested. Because Ritoku at that time also felt uncomfortable, he explained honestly that he prefers to be alone and asks her to give him space. Indirectly, Ritoku rejects his partner's presence, which ends up making his partner cry and leave him. Honestly, Ritoku admits that for him the supporter of his mind or heart is not someone, but solitude itself, which has a free nature. For him, not having and not being bound by others is his main goal to stay alive, and even in his second life, he has no intention to change his life goal. Seeing the seriousness of his son's words, with a worried tone his father then tells Jillik that if Jillik doesn't marry, then he will continue to manage or lead this territory. Casually, Jillik answers that for this it doesn't mean the first child has to inherit the leadership right, hearing that his parents immediately fall silent with that fact. They with an awkward smile confirm that there is such a saying among nobles like them. But even though they don't deny it, his parents are sure that one day Jillik will fall in love and find his bride candidate. Time continues to roll quickly, and before you know it, 20 years have passed. Now Jillik is 28 years old and of course still unmarried. He also now lives alone in the capital and succeeds in realizing his dream of getting a license as a magic toolmaker. After building his workplace, he gets his livelihood from selling his invented magic tools. It seems Jillik is preparing his breakfast as usual. With some ingredients in his hands, he is about to take other ingredients that are in his refrigerator. When he opens it, he becomes more convinced with his previous thought, where he has to make a refrigerator with a smaller size. Even though this is a good result, because he succeeded in remaking a refrigerator like in his previous world. But compared to the refrigerator in his previous life, this refrigerator he made is quite large and takes up a lot of space in this room. Besides that, thanks to the invention of this refrigerator magic tool, the Rulin family gets a very large income just from one of his inventions. Even throughout these 20 years, he has made various other magic tools besides the refrigerator. like hair dryer magic tool, fan magic tool, stove magic tool. Not long after, a hissing sound is heard like something cooked. Realizing that, Jillik approaches the tool that makes the sound and opens it. Yes, it is one of his magic tools that works similar to an electric bread toaster, but now uses magic. Taking the toasted bread and cutting it, the bread looks perfectly cooked where the outside of the bread is dry and the inside filled with cheese melts. Eating it, Jillik smiles proudly because his magic tool functions normally. He even feels this hot sandwich maker magic tool will sell quite well. He can even say this is the best magic tool he has ever made. After finishing breakfast and dressing, Jillik leaves his house. Looking at the clear morning sky, the morning sun seems to greet him enthusiastically. Seeing the clear and vast morning sky makes Jillik feel very relieved. He then remembers the difficult times a few years ago where things like family successor, and pressure to marry. He has truly been free from all that. Even though feeling relieved, just thinking about it makes Jillik feel tired again and sighs long. He mumbles to himself and encourages himself who has gone through all that and survived until now. Walking in the city while carrying his suitcase, Jillik often meets people he knows. Even some of them are housewives who often inform Jillik about virgin girls and offer them. And of course Jillik refuses as usual. There are also men who have bought Jillik's magic tools and express their happiness because they function very well. Seeing all that, Jillik feels that he just needs to make magic tools to make things easier and of course make his life more comfortable later. With that, Jillik feels that his life is perfect. And in this second life, Jillik will live his solo life wholeheartedly. The hissing sound from the grilled meat and the appetizing aroma fill the area around the dining table where a stove is placed. For Jillik, being able to eat whatever and whenever he wants, especially alone, is the best thing. Taking the cooked meat and dipping it into the sauce, before then eating it, Jillik enjoys every bite. According to him, eating grilled meat is something that can be enjoyed the most without anyone else around. A few hours earlier, Jillik walks through a market in the morning. He passes various snacks and items being sold there. The merchants there enthusiastically offer and promote their goods, from items to food like meat and fish. Seeing all that makes Jillik recall the recap of his life so far. His life that ended alone in his previous life, instead reincarnated after the god, Origami, became interested in him. He is reborn as the eldest son in the noble Rulin family that is always involved in magical equipment. After growing up, he faces other problems like marriage and throne inheritance. But Jillik ignores everything and avoids all the pressure. And now, after 28 years have passed, he succeeds in becoming an independent magic tool craftsman in the capital and enjoys his life. After walking for a few minutes and passing a large gate, his steps stop at a large building. He takes a breath and stares at the building, then starts entering the building, which turns out to be his workplace. Opening the door and entering, inside there is already a young man with short blonde hair with an enthusiastic facial expression. He is Tristan, one of Jillik's employees. He is carrying a heavy bag and greets Jillik as usual. Jillik then takes off his jacket and hangs it on the coat hanger. But Tristan falls silent while staring at Jillik, who puts on his usual flat expression. Because curious, innocently Tristan asks his boss whether today Jillik's mood is bad. Hearing that Jillik puts on a slightly confused expression and answers innocently that he is not experiencing a bad mood. Then Tristan uses both his fingers to widen his own lips while saying that it's really a waste to have a sour facial expression. Moreover, Jillik has a handsome face, so it's better to smile more often. Tristan then demonstrates it and smiles confidently and feeling handsome while giving a thumbs up. Then says that if Jillik does it like this, it's guaranteed Jillik will be popular among the girls. Yes, Tristan tries to encourage Jillik, but for Jillik himself that is very contrary to his principle. And as a result, Jillik instead feels annoyed with Tristan's words just now. While taking some paper rolls in his hand, Jillik explains that he doesn't need to become popular, so he asks Tristan to mind his own business. Hearing the answer that sounds cold makes Tristan sigh long, feeling disappointed, because Jillik always gives similar answers. He then comments that Jillik is really cold. Tristan then immediately enters his daydream mode and puts on a handsome pose while smiling and says if he becomes Jillik, then he will play with the girls like crazy. Hearing that, Jillik only puts on an annoyed expression and mutters in his heart, "What a person who has no burden at all." Sitting in his chair, Jillik then puts on his glasses and asks about the status of processing his ice magic stones. Hearing that, Tristan immediately brings a box full of blue crystal stones to the table. While grinning, he answers that everything is done. Tristan himself has the task to process magic stones. Magic stones themselves are the core of magical creatures and cannot be used as they are. And this is Tristan's important role, where he is tasked to cut and smooth the uneven parts until the magic stone can be used. Taking one magic stone and looking at it closely, Jillik smiles because Tristan's work has no obstacles. As if that is a green light sign, Jillik then points to another wooden box filled with magic stones and orders Tristan to process all those magic stones next. Seeing the pile of magic stones in several boxes makes Tristan freeze with his eyes wide open because surprised by the amount. Not long after, a woman's voice is heard greeting them both enthusiastically. She is Rouge, a red-haired woman with her enthusiastic personality. She enters her workplace while carrying a thick stack of papers in her hand and then places it on their table. While smiling enthusiastically, she explains that this time there is a request to produce their new magic tool. Rouge herself has the task as a salesman or saleswoman as well as the business runner. Her tasks like securing connections and also delivering products. Basically, she handles everything outside the production part. Hearing the news about the large production request makes Tristan immediately shout, surprised with a tone of disbelief. Rouge just laughs and says that getting a job that can be done is a good thing. Tristan immediately puts on his flat face and glances at Jillik, while saying that indeed what Rouge said just now is true, but their main problem this time is the lack of workforce. Jillik himself turns his face away. As if not wanting to care about that, Rouge grins and nods in agreement. She then comments that indeed, because in fact this workplace only has 2 workers. Suddenly, Rouge with her seller aura approaches Jillik and persuades him to add more workers by explaining that the refrigerator delivery this time has decreased, and their financial situation this time is no longer losing and more leaning towards profit. Therefore, isn't this the right time to add more workers? Jillik immediately answers flatly that it's not needed. Hearing that direct answer makes Rouge annoyed until her finger playfully pokes Jillik's cheek. Rouge then explains with a pleading tone that if they recruit more workers, then they can also increase their sales. Moreover, there are so many people in this world who want Jillik's magic tools. Hearing that, with a serious tone, Jillik answers that he has said this repeatedly, where he only makes magic tools to make his own life more comfortable. Therefore, from the beginning, he never had the thought to do all this to fulfill other people's interests. Hearing that, Rouge immediately sighs long because frustrated and comments that Jillik's thinking hasn't changed at all from before. Then Tristan, while raising his hand and with his panicked tone, comments that even so he still asks to increase the number of their workers. Hearing that, Rouge's expression becomes sparkling happily. On the other hand, Jillik still puts on his flat expression and asks the reason. With a panicked and worried tone, Tristan explains that if things like this continue, then he will never be able to get a girlfriend. Hearing that reason, immediately Jillik and Rouge's expressions become flat. With his clear and panicked tone, Tristan explains that his co-worker, namely Rouge, is beautiful. But Rouge is already married. On the other hand, there are no more women, only their boss, who doesn't want to socialize, left. Hearing that nickname coming out of Tristan's leaky mouth makes Jillik feel annoyed. Tristan chatters again, panicked, that he will never meet other people in a workplace like this. He will also reach the age of 18, and he wants to enrich his experience and get married too. Hearing the explanation that sounds like complaints, Jillik immediately answers it by explaining that the workplace is not a place to hope to meet a soulmate like that. Besides, what's good about marriage? They have to share income and can't use it as they please. Between work and hobbies, their free time becomes very limited. Moreover, before Tristan falls for a woman, he suggests Tristan to get his license as a magic tool craftsman. Every word Jillik said feels like arrows released at him and sticking like undeniable facts. As a result, Tristan immediately collapses and with a hurt tone tells his co-worker that Jillik just said cruel words. Hearing that, Rouge with her annoyed expression comments that she doesn't fully agree with what Jillik said just now. But Jillik is also not entirely wrong, and that makes it even worse. She then comments, like trying to change Jillik's perspective, that marriage is not all bad. According to her, spending time with someone they love is something extraordinarily beautiful. Moreover, they can also get happy experiences from raising children like a romantic bird family. But even though given another perspective, Jillik, who is like an alpha wolf, answers flatly but firmly that he understands that out there are many people like that. But even so, he prefers to remain alone. For him, spending time with others just feels unsuitable for him, and he is also not good at dealing with children. Hearing that their gazes immediately clash like electric currents attracting each other, and the harmonious bird now has to face the lone wolf. Because this often happens, with a resigned tone, Rouge turns her body and says that arguing like this is useless, because no matter how many times this often happens, hearing that Jillik with the same flat tone nods and answers that he also agrees. Then, as if not knowing etiquette like a primitive person, Tristan puts on a mocking expression and says that because of things like this his boss can't get married. Jillik becomes annoyed with Tristan's quirky behavior and asks him to misunderstand. With a small smile and a tone that seems proud, he explains that it doesn't mean he can't get married, but he doesn't want to get married. It doesn't mean he never gets requests and proposals for marriage. It's just that he is not interested in things like this. That's why he asks Tristan not to equate him with someone who can't get married, because it's quite disturbing. Again, Jillik's words fly like fact arrows that directly stick to Tristan's body. Because time is wasted, Jillik then orders Tristan to start working. With his lazy tone, Tristan obeys his order. On the other hand, Rouge, who sees them working, puts on a pitying facial expression and mutters to herself that Jillik has a tall body, very educated, high income, and handsome face. Just by having that perspective, according to her, Jillik has wasted all those important aspects. Morning turns to night. After working quite long, Rogue tidies her document papers and asks her boss whether they will stop their work now. Hearing that, Jillik takes off his glasses and answers that according to him, they all will stop today's work now. Tristan then invites his boss and co-worker to eat together after work. He also explains that lately there is a restaurant that has an interesting food serving method in terms of meat. And the menu is called yakiniku, where the customers will get thin slices of meat and the customers can experience grilling the meat directly. Hearing it makes Rogue a bit surprised because she knows and comments that she also knows about the restaurant. Even lately, the restaurant has become one of the restaurants that always has the longest queue. Simultaneously and enthusiastically mentioning the name of the restaurant, named Maigio Barbecue Restaurant. On the other hand, Jillik seems to put on a flat expression, but when hearing the restaurant's name, he thinks that he hasn't eaten grilled meat for a long time, and according to him, this dinner menu with grilled meat doesn't feel bad either. But suddenly, when thought they all would agree to go eat dinner together, Rogue immediately apologizes and explains that she has to go home immediately and take care of her children today. Therefore, she will refuse this time's event. With a disappointed and pleading tone, Tristan tries to persuade her by saying maybe just for today it's okay. But Rogue, who can't accept it, still prepares to go and explains that she also actually wants to go with them. But now is an important time for her children's development. She then apologizes once again and says goodbye to them. Inside the workplace, Tristan only waves his hand while crying, disappointed that Rogue can't join. His crying expression immediately changes to a flat expression, and while walking away says that if like this he will also cancel it because going with two men has no meaning. Clearly, Rogue only wants to eat with women. Hearing that, Jillik, who also only wants to be alone, nods in agreement with Tristan. After Tristan goes home, Jillik decides to go to the restaurant alone and locks his workplace door. Jillik then goes to the city, where even at night around the city is quite crowded. Most people are relaxing after a busy day. Light conversation sounds, laughter, and activity sounds are still heard, livening up the cold night atmosphere to warm. Walking past various restaurants makes Jillik smell various food aromas and makes him hungry. Not long after, he finds a long queue, just like what Rogue said before. And sure enough, the queue comes from the restaurant named Maigio Barbecue Restaurant. But suddenly, innocently, Jillik passes the queue that has been queuing. Of course, Jillik's action makes the restaurant employee who is managing the queue surprised. He immediately asks Jillik to queue, but unexpectedly the employee is instead scolded by the restaurant owner, which makes him surprised. The restaurant owner explains to his employee that Jillik is an exception. Hearing it makes the employee even more confused. With an awkward and guilty tone, the restaurant owner apologizes to Jillik and explains that his employee was just hired a few days ago. Without hesitation, the restaurant owner orders his employee to apologize to Jillik. The employee, even though confused, can only obey and follow his superior's order. But Jillik looks relaxed and asks the restaurant owner not to make an issue of that. He then comments to the restaurant owner that now his store has become very crowded. The store owner, with his happy tone, nods and answers that all this is thanks to Jillik, because after realizing the idea given by Jillik, this is the result, and he is really very grateful to Jillik. While entering the restaurant, Jillik says that he only came up with the idea he wanted to come up with, and got the result. He then asks whether the seat he always reserves is still available. The store owner smiles happily and nods. Walking in front of him, he says that he will escort Jillik directly to his seat. And yes, the reaction from the other female employees in the restaurant is the same as other girls. Suddenly they are captivated by Jillik's handsomeness, even though Jillik himself ignores it. Jillik is really treated like an important person and directly served by the restaurant owner. Even his food ingredients are prepared directly by him. The restaurant owner asks what Jillik wants to order this time. Jillik smiles and answers that he orders as usual. Hearing that, the restaurant owner immediately finishes preparing the stove for grilling and returns to the kitchen. Not long after, he returns with a plate of meat slices with herbal plants and fragrances that match the meat. He explains that Jillik's order has arrived, where the meat ordered is crimson beef tongue, thick harami slices, and also galbi, then a cup of beer. Harami itself is the beef part from the diaphragm, for galbi is marinated ribs Korean style. While placing the meat slices on the grill, he comments happily that if eating at this restaurant, then it's only right to order their flagship meat, namely crimson beef. The hissing sound from the grilled meat becomes an instrument that whets the appetite. The rising smoke emits a distinctive meat aroma. Using chopsticks to take the cooked meat, then dipping it into the provided sauce before then eating it. Jillik chews the meat that melts in the mouth while closing his eyes, enjoying every bite. As a person who lives alone and really enjoys his food, Jillik knows, from the meat age, cutting technique, and also seasoning, this Manga restaurant is at the highest level compared to other meat restaurants. His hand doesn't stop to keep flipping the meat and filling with other meat, then eating the cooked meat. He keeps repeating it and interspersing the full enjoyment action with gulping beer. He, while grinning happily, says that this meat is very delicious. He then glances at the empty seats around him. He mutters to himself that this satisfaction feeling he wouldn't get if his two employees also come here. Jillik then imagines it, where Tristan asks what Jillik will eat, but instead Rogue who answers it. And strangely, Tristan instead obeys Rogue. Not stopping there, they both will surely be noisy with Tristan's silly behavior, and he will surely end up not being able to be calm. Realizing that he has avoided it, Jillik feels he has taken the right action to come to this restaurant alone. Other tables are really very busy and crowded with visitors. Even every seat there is already filled. Amid the crowded visitors, some female employees from the restaurant are chatting, where according to the ponytail girl, that Jillik's appearance and aura today are very cool too. Then the female waitress with one side ponytail hair proudly says that she will take Jillik's next order if Jillik wants to make another order. Hearing that, the ponytail female waitress looks upset and says that her friend is unfair because she also wants to do it. Hearing their conversation, the restaurant owner suddenly appears behind them, and with a threatening tone, but with a smile, he emphasizes that he doesn't mind if they both want to take Jillik's order, but don't do anything beyond just taking the order. Their neck hairs immediately stand, and their bodies shiver in fear. With their panicked tone, they nod quickly and immediately go. After warning his female employees, the store owner for a moment glances at Jillik, who is eating. He knows that Jillik is a long-time loyal customer to his restaurant, and also someone who has great merit to his business. Originally, this crowded restaurant initially was on the verge. That's because at that time, the increasingly tight trade competition in the capital. New stores emerge and competition in attracting customers gets hotter. This restaurant also becomes one of the victims of that competition. Day by day, its finances plunge into the danger area and keep getting worse. But one day, Jillik comes to his restaurant as usual. But when Jillik enters his restaurant, he realizes about the customers that are increasingly empty and rarely seen in this restaurant. With a slightly worried tone, he asks about his trade condition. Hearing that, the restaurant owner can only sigh and say his situation honestly, that this old restaurant can no longer keep up with the changes and trade developments in this city. Even so, he also knows what causes the decline in his business. He comments that if only he had an idea to attract customers with their meat dishes. Jillik falls silent for a moment. His gaze glances around the restaurant and fixates on the restaurant's billboard. Then an idea pops into his head. Without beating around the bush, he explains the idea to the restaurant owner. Unexpectedly, the restaurant owner shows the opposite reaction. He is so surprised and disbelieving, or more precisely pessimistic, about the idea given by Jillik, where the idea is to serve thin meat slices on the table and let the customers experience grilling the meat themselves. With his flat expression, Jillik nods and explains again that that's the idea he suggests, and this method is called yakiniku. For the restaurant owner, this idea is new because normally merchants prepare everything so the buyers just enjoy it. Because of that, hearing about grilling themselves makes him doubtful because it has never been before. And yes, the restaurant owner expresses his thoughts. And with his flat expression, Jillik answers that precisely in that part that makes the customers interested and comfortable because they can feel it directly. The restaurant owner becomes more surprised because Jillik really suggests that idea. At first, he indeed couldn't understand the uniqueness of the idea. But because his business is already on the brink, and he also has no other ideas. In the end, the restaurant owner decides to try it, and the result on the first day implemented, suddenly customers flood in. His employees, who initially looked relaxed, now busy serving the endless coming customers. Until at one point, one of his employees tells the restaurant owner, who is also tired in the kitchen, that the number of queuing customers is too long and they won't be able to fulfill all the orders. Hearing that, the restaurant owner freezes between surprised and happy because his business is running again. Now his restaurant returns to its golden age. He doesn't even need to worry about the plunging income diagram swimming in the danger area, and all that thanks to Jillik. And that's why the restaurant owner always makes Jillik his special customer. When the restaurant owner is watching his customers enjoying his dishes, the two female employees ask him. They know that barbecue feels more enjoyable eaten together with many people, but why Jillik always looks alone. Hearing that, the restaurant owner remembers again the times when his business was difficult, and indeed at that time Jillik always came alone. The restaurant owner then answers that everyone has different ways to enjoy something, and maybe Jillik finds a way to enjoy it by eating alone. That's why they both shouldn't do weird things again to Jillik. The restaurant owner's explanation, ended with a warning, makes the two female employees just agree and go back to work. On the other hand, in the middle of his meal, Jillik mutters to himself that next he has to start seriously looking for rice. A new plan for Jillik to make his life more comfortable. Clear sky, birds chirping in the sky. The hustle and bustle of the city adorns every corner of the crowded city. In one of the rooms on the upper floor, Jillik is seen making a blueprint for a magic tool in his room. But what is seen? Jillik just stays silent while holding his pen. Suddenly, with an annoyed movement, he puts his pen back into its container and starts removing his glasses. With a somewhat annoyed tone, he mutters that he thought he could come up with another brilliant idea today. But the reality is the opposite. Looking at the city view from the height through his window, Jillik thinks that he will go to the city since he hasn't been to the city for a long time, and also today is his day off. After preparing, Jillik goes to the city and heads to a building which is the Adventurers Guild, an organization where people who join get their main income from defeating monsters. Entering the Adventurers Guild building, the noisy sound of the adventurers welcomes Jillik. He goes to the request board and looks at the available request papers along with the other adventurers. After a while reading each request paper, Jillik feels relieved because there are no request papers for hunting dangerous monsters. With that, Jillik can collect herbal plants safely. Taking the request paper to collect herbal plants, he then brings it to the receptionist desk. After queuing for a while, finally it's Jillik's turn. The receptionist woman smiles widely when realizing Jillik comes. She asks what she can help Jillik with. Jillik then gives the request paper he took from the request board and explains that he wants to accept the request. Taking the request paper, the receptionist then registers the request into the guild's logbook and explains about the herbal plant collection target is Karuka grass and also button mushrooms that are in the eastern forest. After registering the request, the receptionist falls silent for a moment while staring at Jillik. She then calls him and gives advice to him to form a group. She explains that for a skilled rank B adventurer like Jillik, doing requests alone is quite risky and regrettable. Therefore, by forming a group, Jillik can speed up raising his adventurer rank and also get more money. Hearing that, Jillik smiles and apologizes while answering that he refuses her advice. He refuses not without reason. Indeed, Jillik prefers to be alone like his nature and also his life principle. But there is another thing that makes him refuse. Namely, there is a disadvantage if he joins or forms a group. Based on the protective blessing from the god, Hit Origami, given to him has a condition, where if he forms a group, then his physical abilities will drastically decrease. He even experienced that condition when he was still a teenager and formed a group with other adventurers. As a result, his body immediately felt weak, even similar to a person who lacks energy and becomes a baby again. At that time, Jillik and his group were fighting the weakest monster, a monster that can be said to be cute and funny, namely the slime monster. In his condition that was dry because his physical blessing decreased, one slime managed to escape from his comrade, who was at the front guard. The slime with its slow bouncing movement comes approaching Jillik and attacks him. Maybe its attack can be said to be a small nudge. But the effect for Jillik was already similar to a fatal attack, until he finally collapsed on the ground just because of that attack. His comrade at the rear guard immediately asked his comrade at the front guard to help him carry Jillik, who was already exhausted, back to a safe place. Hearing that, his comrade at the front guard even glared, because so surprised, even the slime that attacked him pitted him. Terms like "together we are unbeatable" are not suitable, even useless for him. After his request is finished being registered, Jillik leaves while saying to the receptionist that he refuses her advice, not like he is aiming for the highest adventurer rank or something like that. Hearing that explanation, the receptionist feels curious as well as confused, because usually adventurers will aim for that. A few hours walking to the eastern forest, Jillik finally arrives. The dense and shady forest is displayed in front of him. He then enters the forest and starts looking for the herbal plants he needs. After searching, he finally finds it, Kuruka grass, and also button mushrooms. Kuruka grass itself is a grass that can be used to remove the fishy smell from monster meat or fish meat. Besides that, Kuruka grass also has antibacterial effects, so it's suitable to be used as herbal medicine. Then button mushrooms are one of the cooking ingredients whose processing is quite simple, like can be processed by boiling or grilling. Jillik starts collecting it, and luckily this time he gets quite good quality mushrooms with large sizes. Remembering his target is mushrooms, Jillik immediately takes out his bag, and then puts it into the bag. The bag he brings is not just any bag. It is one of the magic tools that can hold more items than the bag's shape itself. But magic tools like this magic bag are included in an artifact. Artifacts themselves are tools that have power or abilities that exceed the technological advances of the current era. It can be said that artifacts are objects with powers that cannot be made or reproduced in the current era, unlike magic tools in general. Therefore, their existence becomes very rare, and usually artifacts can be found inside dungeons with a quite small success rate to find them. Even if bought on the market, it will be priced at a high price. Because of that, also many people become adventurers and enter dungeons to get wealth quickly. While putting the herbal plants into his bag, Jillik mutters to himself that every time he uses his magic bag, he can't think of anything else except about this artifact, which according to him is very mysterious. That's because he who is blessed with understanding skills about making magic tools has difficulty understanding the workings, and also the structure of this artifact bag. But even so, Jillik considers it as a challenge, where artifacts are something still wrapped in unknown technology and can still be dug deeper. While muttering happily, Jillik continues to put the herbal plants he finds into his bag. But suddenly there is a sound of bushes right behind him that makes Jillik reflexively turn. A black wild boar monster is seen that looks very annoyed and snorts towards Jillik. Seeing that, Jillik grins and provokes it by asking whether this pig is angry because his favorite mushrooms are stolen by him. Drawing his sword from its sheath, Jillik prepares for battle. Casually, he puts on a stance while commenting that this will be a good warm-up because he hasn't fought for a long time. Seeing Jillik, who is ready, the black pig immediately charges and rams using its long and sharp tusks. Jillik stares at it seriously and holds his sword tightly. But instead of parrying or doing an offensive movement, Jillik instead casually dodges, letting the pig slide past him. Even the pig is surprised by Jillik's action just now. As a result, a loud crashing sound is heard from the pig. And yes, the pig now has its tusks stuck in the tree behind Jillik. The pig panics and has difficulty pulling out its tusks that are stuck quite deep into the tree. Jillik puts on a last respect pose and mutters that this can't be called a warm-up, but he also doesn't mean he will miss the food ingredients in front of him. The pig ends up in Jillik's hands as food ingredients. After cleaning up and taking the pig meat, Jillik then enters the forest deeper. He doesn't intend to return to the city quickly, but he heads to his favorite place that he found in the forest, or can be said a hidden gem. After walking for a few minutes, the view of the dense forest now looks increasingly sparse. Not long after, a smile appears on Jillik's face when the place he is heading to is clearly visible. Where the place he is heading to is a lake with a beautiful view and spread wide. The clear lake, and also the mountains that are clearly visible, make the place feel like a beautiful painting. Even Jillik himself admits that he never gets bored and satisfied coming to this place, even though he has come to this place many times. Approaching the lake, Jillik is already very happy, and as usual he can enjoy this beautiful and peaceful view alone. Just muttering like that, Jillik immediately sees the presence of someone else there. Not half-heartedly, the person even sets up a tent like a camper and sits relaxed in his chair with a book covering his face. Maybe asleep. Seeing that his happy expression now changes to an annoyed facial expression along with his active antisocial nature. While walking slowly and away from the person, Jillik admits, even though annoyed, that this place is not his private land, so it's certain that he has the possibility to meet others. Feeling already far enough from the person, Jillik doesn't waste time anymore and immediately sets up his own tent. And yes, Jillik also doesn't hold back to use a tent for his camping. After a few minutes later, finally his tent is set up. Jillik then takes out the food ingredients he brought from home in the form of boiled eggs, cheese, meat, and a plate of nuts. After all the food is ready, he then takes out his own modified magic tool. Its shape is similar to a portable blender, but actually it is a magic tool for smoking. He intends to make food with the smoking process. After all the ingredients and tools are ready, he starts cutting all his ingredients into sizes that can be eaten easily. Then putting small wood pieces into the roof part of his magic tool and burning it until red and closing it. Then he turns on his tool. Not forgetting, he also connects the hose attached to his tool to a light glass cube or plastic and uses it as a cover for his food. Immediately the smoke from the wood burning is sucked and enters the cube. After everything runs normally, Jillik lets it while reading a book. A few minutes pass and Jillik's stomach is already rumbling just from smelling the aroma. Removing his glasses, Jillik feels his food is ready because with the thick smoke earlier it should finish quickly. He then lifts his glass or plastic cube. Immediately the typical smoking aroma is smelled and blends with the aroma of his food that makes an appetizing aroma. Jillik smiles widely happy when seeing his food is ready, but immediately his expression again changes to annoyed when his antisocial radar realizes there is someone else near him. Turning to his side, there is already a man with his admiring face. Without saying a word, the man with the same wide smile suddenly turns to Jillik. Jillik, with a confused as well as somewhat annoyed tone, asks who this man is. The man, for some reason, with his proud tone, answers that his name is Ether. Hearing his name alone, Jillik already feels tired because he feels involved in something troublesome. Just to confirm his guess, Jillik immediately turns to Ether and looks behind him. The man's tent earlier is empty. Realizing that, Jillik without hesitation shows his annoyed expression because Ether is the person in the tent and was asleep. Seeing Jillik's expression like a fierce dog makes Ether feel a bit scared and asks him not to be too wary of him. Ether explains that he smelled a delicious aroma coming from Jillik's tent. Because curious, he ended up coming here. Hearing that, Jillik intends to immediately drive him away by saying that since Ether already knows, then no longer curious. Therefore he asks Ether to return to his own tent. But suddenly Ether interrupts and with his enthusiastic tone comments that Jillik uses strange smoke on his food. But for some reason the aroma is so delicious. Hearing his comment that is so enthusiastic makes Jillik more annoyed. Even worse, Ether without shame asks Jillik to let him try his food. Because it's felt difficult to drive him away, Jillik feels he has no other choice. While preparing a skewer, he is curious whether Ether has never eaten smoked food before. Jillik then offers his skewer without saying anything, and sure enough, Ether's reaction looks confused, showing that Ether has never eaten this type of food. Jillik explains that this small stick is a skewer, and the skewer is used to eat this food. Hearing that, Ether smiles widely and accepts it. He then skewers a piece of cheese. With a curious and puzzled face, he brings the piece of cheese to his face and starts sniffing it like a cat that is testing. Just sniffing a few times, Ether is quite surprised with the aroma. He comments with a surprised tone that the aroma feels strange but interesting. Besides that, the aroma doesn't smell like smoke in general, and that makes him confused with the aroma. When he puts the piece of cheese into his mouth, his eyes immediately open wide and sparkle when the taste feels so delicious. He, with a tone full of surprise and enthusiasm, asks Jillik where Jillik got this cheese, whether this cheese is high-quality cheese. Hearing that, Jillik grins satisfied. Then he answers that the cheese Ether just ate is ordinary cheese that he bought at the cheese shop in the market. Hearing that makes Ether more surprised. With the same tone, he comments that the cheese earlier has a fragrant aroma or can be said to have a unique flavor. Besides that, the flavor is also at a different level from the usual cheese taste. He approaches Jilek's food plate and with a puzzled tone asks what this food is. Jilek explains that this food is called smoked food, but for his food this time, he uses a simpler concept just to strengthen the taste a little. Ether becomes more admiring as well as confused and surprised. He comments again that he never thought that just by placing food in smoke can make the taste even more delicious. Jilek explains while rummaging through his magic bag that actually it's not that simple. He takes out a bag of wood pieces and explains that if you want to do smoking, they have to use the right wood so the smoke can produce aroma and taste like this. Ether then holds the bag and looks at it closely. With a confused and puzzled tone, he asks whether this small piece is like dry bark or something. Jilek nods and explains that as additional information, he uses apple tree wood for this smoking. Without any cue, Ether immediately sniffs the bag containing Jilek's wood pieces because curious. Seeing that makes Jilek annoyed and immediately snatches it. Because more interested, Ether asks permission to taste other foods. Jilek, who feels still difficult to drive Ether away, allows it and asks him to bring his own plate. He also asks Ether to return to his own tent after getting his food. Hearing that, Ether runs to his tent like a happy child after being bought ice cream. But when returning, Ether not only brings his plate, but also brings a bottle and glass. He then offers one of his glasses and shows the bottle. He with a happy and proud tone thanks Jilek for giving very delicious food, and as a return favor he has something good. Seeing the bottle, Jilek becomes surprised and also disbelieving. With the same tone he asks, isn't that Cerberus wine? Cerberus wine or wine is a rare and also famous product from the Cerberus region. What makes it rare? Because only produced a few bottles each year. Hearing Jilek, who knows about the bottle, makes Ether grin proudly. He praises Jilek by saying that apparently Jilek knows about this wine. That means Jilek is also a wine lover. With his proud tone, he offers Jilek to taste his Cerberus wine. Without hesitation, Jilek accepts his offer and thanks. With that, they do an exchange or barter. Ether returns to his tent with a plate of Jilek's smoked food, and Jilek gets a glass of Cerberus wine. The first sip makes Jilek smile widely at the very delicious taste. Skewering his smoked meat and eating it, Jilek closes his eyes when he enjoys the taste sensation. In his heart, he comments that smoked meat and also wine are a perfect combination. He grins and stares at his wine glass with a happy gaze. He mutters to himself with a happy tone that he didn't expect the day when he could taste or try Cerberus wine would come today. This makes him remember the memories in his previous life, where he also experienced something similar. When he was camping alone, he met someone who was camping like him. The person came to his tent and did a barter or food exchange, with the equal exchange concept. Giving something good then will get something good too. Even though he is an antisocial person, but he admits that he doesn't hate the concept, especially in food matters. Not long after, Ether's voice is heard loudly expressing happiness at the very delicious taste. He keeps shouting like just coming back to life. Hearing that makes Jilek also smile because he can also understand how Ether feels. The beautiful lake view, clear sky, mountains stretching calmly in the distance become their eating companions there. A calming and also satisfying day for Jilek. While staring at the view and the wine glass in his hand, he mutters that he will fish after he finishes eating. Time passes quickly and the sun starts to set. Jilek walks home with a smile on his face. He thinks about his dinner menu, where this time he plans to eat grilled fish with salt. But his thoughts about dinner immediately fade when seeing a horse carriage parked in front of his house. He feels curious about that because he didn't get news about guests. He then examines the horse carriage and realizes that the horse carriage is not from his family, because usually horse carriages from the Rulin family have emblems. Therefore, he is sure that the horse carriage is just an ordinary horse carriage and not from important people. Not long after, an unfamiliar voice appears behind Jilek. With an annoyed tone, the person comments to Jilek that Jilek finally comes home too. Turning back, Jilek's body immediately jerks, surprised when realizing that the person behind him is his sister Ilya, who is now an adult. Seeing the figure of his sister, who has already put on her annoyed face, makes Jilek surprised. He would never expect his sister to suddenly appear here. Jilek feels that this situation is quite dangerous for himself, considering his sister's nature is quite stubborn. With a worried tone to divert their conversation, Jilek asks whether Ilya came here alone. If yes, then Ilya is too reckless. Hearing that, Ilya shakes her head. While turning to the horse carriage, she answers that it's impossible for her to come here alone. She came here using a normal horse carriage parked in front of Jilek's house, besides that she also came with Gilliam. Right after explaining it, an old man in his servant clothes comes out of the horse carriage and immediately bows greeting Jilek. He is Gilliam, the head servant of the Rulin family. Seeing Gilliam's figure, who also appears in this place, is really beyond Jilek's expectation until he freezes there. With a tone not wanting to believe, Jilek asks his sister, why bother coming here using an ordinary horse carriage? With an annoyed and irritated tone, Ilya answers that it's because she is sure that her antisocial brother will immediately run away if he sees or feels his own family's horse carriage. Hearing that, Jilek immediately turns his face away, as if innocent. Still acting innocent. Innocently, Jilek asks the reason his sister came here. Hearing his indifferent tone makes Ilya more annoyed and scolds him. She explains that her arrival is related to their family dinner meeting. She doesn't believe Jilek doesn't know this. Even their family has sent letters about this event several times. Hearing that again, Jilek puts on his innocent expression and innocently comments that he feels like such a letter arrival has happened. As usual, Jilek immediately uses his reliable technique to refuse it. He puts on his serious face expression and says that he can't come because he is busy with his work. When Jilek feels his technique to refuse all his events will succeed, apparently not. Ilya firmly answers back that Jilek won't be able to refuse it, and today he has to come with them back to his residence today. His first tactic doesn't work. Jilek doesn't run out of ideas. He immediately executes his second tactic, run away while still refusing it. But unexpectedly, his sister immediately grips her brother's arm very tightly while refusing his refusal. Jilek's body immediately stops and turns to her with his panicked face while trying to refuse it again. But his sister, who is famous for her stubbornness, still gives the same answer. Ilya explains that a year has passed since Jilek last visited their house, and their mother is worried about Jilek. Even their father gave her the mandate to drag Jilek to his house no matter how. Therefore, she asks her brother to at least occasionally show his nose, or can be said to deposit his face to his parents. Hearing his sister's explanation makes Jilek surprised. What makes him more surprised is his obedient father's words even saying that. Not long after, Gilliam, while bowing, explains while calling Jilek with the young master call that everyone in the Rulin family residence is worried about Jilek's condition, who has no news at all. Therefore, he asks Jilek to spare his time to greet everyone in the Rulin family residence. Hearing that makes Jilek more difficult to refuse it, especially the request comes out of Gilliam's mouth. It's strange indeed, prioritizing Gilliam the servant's request over his own parents. In the end, Jilek, who can't refuse it anymore, reluctantly accepts it. He explains that he will come with them and asks Gilliam to stop calling him young master. Hearing that positive answer makes Ilya and also Gilliam smile happily, and Gilliam starts calling him Jilek with the san honorific only. While about to go to his house, Jilek explains to his sister that he will prepare first. Therefore, he asks his sister to wait in the horse carriage. Hearing that, his sister feels driven away, and with her annoyed tone asks her brother to at least let her enter his house. Hearing that, without hesitation, Jilek immediately refuses it firmly. Ilya starts to get irritated and asks the reason. Innocently, Jilek answers that he is not a man who lets unknown people enter his house. Hearing that, Ilya falls silent for a moment to process his sentence. After a few seconds later, she immediately gets angry and pulls Jilek's jacket emotionally while saying angrily that they are family. Still with a calm tone, Jilek explains again that the rule of refusing someone in his house also applies to his own family members, especially Ilya, someone who always broke into his private room in the past and destroyed his magic tool into pieces. Therefore, Ilya is entered into the blacklist to enter his house. Ilya freezes when admitting the past incident, but still she gets angry because the past thing is brought up again by her brother. Hearing his sister's angry chatter, Jilek asks her to be quiet because it disturbs the neighbors around his house. After a few hours later, Jilek finishes with his preparation and uses the horse carriage used by Ilya to return to the Rulin residence. Gilliam opens the door for them both. Ilya is seen going home with a wide smile on her face because she succeeded in completing her mission to bring her antisocial brother back. On the other hand, Jilek himself looks usual. There is a little nostalgia, but also, of course, there is an uncomfortable feeling because he has to meet others. Not long after entering, their father arrives with a face that looks a bit older. He greets Jilek while smiling and comments that it's been a long time since they met last time and asks about his condition. While walking together to the dining room, Jilek answers with his calm tone that nothing has changed at all if only a year has passed. Hearing that his father, who has an obedient nature like before, laughs softly and nods in agreement. He says that Jillik is the same as his mother, who always looks young no matter how many years have passed. Seeing how much his father misses makes Ilya smile widely. She then approaches her brother and invites her father to save their conversation for when they arrive at the dining room. Hearing that his father laughs while apologizing because he got too carried away in chatting with his eldest son. A few moments later, the dining room door is opened and there is already his mother sitting in the chair alone. Seeing Jillik's arrival, with a slightly disappointed tone, she comments to her eldest son that Jillik came late. Without stepping on the break in his mouth, Jillik innocently answers, while giving his jacket to Gilliam, that his lateness is very reasonable because his family called him suddenly. Hearing her son still as usual can answer freely makes his mother annoyed, and turns it back by asking whose fault it is for not checking the letters they have sent to Jillik. Ilya immediately whispers to her mother like an informant who is reporting. She says that her brother intended to skip this dinner event again if she didn't come to pick him up. She also reports about her brother, who considers her as someone entered into the blacklist to enter his house, even though she has come far to pick him up. Hearing the whisper between Ilya and his mother makes Jillik only able to sit silently with his panicked face like a defendant in court. Suddenly a hand pats Jillik's shoulder along with a man's greeting saying that finally Jillik comes to. Hearing that unfamiliar voice, Jillik immediately turns and asks with a slightly surprised tone that the person comes to. The person is a bespectacled man with blonde hair who is Ilya's husband. His name is Ludwig. Hearing Jillik's question, Ludwig, while sitting next to Jillik, answers with a proud smile that of course he comes. Moreover, this event is a family dinner meeting, so he has to join no matter what. Ludwig himself used to be a co-worker in terms of materials, but now he becomes his sister's husband. Honestly, according to Jillik, he never expected his colleague to become very close to his sister to the point they would marry. Remembering this makes Jillik remember when they last met when in his workspace, where Ludwig once complained about the family dinner meeting event, which according to him is quite disturbing. Remembering that, Jillik with a mocking expression and also the same tone tries to repeat Ludwig's sentence at that time right in front of his parents. Realizing what Jillik is about to say, Ludwig's foot shoots quickly under the dining table and immediately steps on Jillik's foot to make him stop talking. With a threatening gaze he asks, as if not knowing anything, what Jillik said is not true at all. Clearly Ludwig's gaze is trying to tell him to read the situation first. But for Jillik, who is always straightforward, as is of course refuses it. As a result, now under the table, there is a foot war between them. Even while chattering at each other, even though their faces look serious, Jillik with a slightly annoyed tone whispers, asking Ludwig not to act like a good person just because he is in front of his mother. Ludwig replies with the same tone that he has no other choice because according to him this event is also important for socialization. Hearing that, Jillik snorts mockingly and says that this is also one of the disadvantages of marriage. As if not wanting to stop fighting Jillik, Ludwig suddenly changes the topic. While smiling friendly, he looks at a little girl named Sarah. She is the daughter of Ludwig and also Ilya. Ludwig then introduces Jillik to her and asks isn't Sarah also happy because she can meet Uncle Jillik, right? Sarah doesn't answer immediately. She falls silent for a moment while staring at Jillik with a confused gaze. She then, with her innocent but cheerful tone, asks, "Who is this uncle?" Immediately the room becomes silent when the innocent question is asked by Sarah. Before then the whole room, everyone laughs out loud. Especially his father, who really laughs out loud and comments that since Jillik hasn't shown his nose here for so long until his own niece forgets Jillik. Jillik can only stay silent without being able to reply, accepting the fact. As if his sarcasm doesn't want to stop, Ilya, with a satisfied but annoying face smile, embraces her daughter's shoulder and asks her brother to introduce himself again to her cute niece for his own good. Even though realizing that it's a sarcasm for him, but Jillik can't refuse it. With a disturbed and reluctant tone, he starts introducing himself to Sarah. After the introduction, instead of asking other things, Sarah instead asks a deadly question to Jillik. "Uncle, still not married?" A question that sticks to Jillik's deepest heart, even sharper than a legendary sword. Who would expect such a deadly question would come out of a child's mouth? Again the room becomes silent after the deadly question comes out of Sarah's mouth. Then Ilya, with her proud face expression, gives a thumbs up to her daughter and tells her that Sarah has asked a good question. On the other hand, his mother sighs long, feeling already represented by her granddaughter, and asks Jillik, "Isn't Jillik already 28 years old?" And when will Jillik get married? Jillik immediately turns his face with an annoyed and panicked expression because the discussion topic he always wants to avoid now comes. While sighing softly, Jillik answers with his slightly annoyed tone that he won't get married. Ilya, with her also annoyed tone, asks the reason. Jillik explains that he likes his solitude and he is not interested in marriage. With her disbelieving tone, she asks, how many times does he need to explain his reason? With a slightly surprised and also disbelieving face, his sister asks by guessing, maybe her brother prefers men over women. Hearing the question that feels deja vu makes Jillik more annoyed and immediately answers that his sister's thinking is completely wrong. Then with her pleading face, she asks her brother to get a girlfriend. Jillik immediately answers that he won't do it. Hearing their conversation, his mother with her anxious expression holds her chin using both hands on the table and comments that according to her maybe her eldest son hasn't married yet because there is no woman who looks good in Jillik's eyes. Hearing his mother-in-law's comment, Ludwig joins in commenting that even though Jillik is often approached by girls both at work or social meetings. Ilya nods in agreement with her husband and sighs before then joining in commenting that indeed from the outside appearance her brother, Jillik is the ideal man for all women. Because in women's view, Jillik has all their dream man's criteria like tall, handsome, smart, high income, eldest son of a Viscount noble, and also still doesn't have a partner. But because of that also according to her it will feel very strange if there is no woman not interested in her brother. That's why his mother's guess earlier is refuted. With her annoyed expression, Ilya comments on Jillik's behavior of not wanting to marry. Hearing that, Jillik immediately turns his face when he doesn't care about it. Hearing his daughter's comment, his mother understands well. While holding back her sadness, his mother comments with a pleading tone that anyone please take her eldest son and force him to marry. His mother also says that she really wants to see Jillik's grandchild. When his mother and also his sister are still busy chattering, Jillik just stays silent while closing his eyes, trying to let all this pass just like that, because for him all this is just noise. Deep in his heart, he really wants to go home to his own house soon. Jillik then clears his throat and tries to divert the topic by asking about the whereabouts of Alto, his little brother. With her innocent tone, Ilya answers that Alto is currently attending a socialization party event, so he can't come. Hearing that, Jillik is surprised and feels unfair. He then protests by asking whether his sister said that Alto can refuse this dinner event, but not for him. But without Jillik realizing, he has scattered thumbtacks for himself. Hearing his protest instead becomes a weapon that backfires. His mother immediately stares at Jillik annoyed and says that Jillik has no right to refuse this event since Jillik never comes in this full year. As if not wanting their emotional waves to die down, Ilya joins while putting on the same expression as her mother and comments that even so, thanks to Alto, now Jillik can enjoy his life and live freely. With her disbelieving tone, Ilya asks whether Jillik realizes this. Hearing that, Jillik jerks for a moment when just realizing it. Where Alto, when adult, he replaces Jillik's position as the successor of the Rulin family head. Even Alto accepts it happily and acts for his brother. To the point, Alto is willing to attend socialization party events with other nobles for his brother, who hates socializing. Remembering how reliable his little brother is, Jillik immediately feels guilty and immediately apologizes to them both, while saying that he will accept Alto's refusal well. Seeing their conversation getting more off track and awkward, his father calms them down and invites them to start dinner together. Hearing that, Sarah enthusiastically says that her stomach is now rumbling. His father then uses his sign language to tell Gilliam to prepare their food. Not long after, other servants come and start preparing food for them. While waiting for the servants' preparation to finish, his mother asks Jillik again about Jillik's eating pattern. Hearing that, Jillik answers that he likes to cook, so he always cooks for himself. Hearing that, Ilya smiles mischievously and comments that she is sure her brother always buys expensive meat and grills it directly, or maybe makes food that matches strong alcohol. Hearing that, Jillik reflexively wants to refuse his sister's thinking, but his words stop in the middle when he just remembers what his sister said is true. Without continuing his words earlier, Jillik just turns his face, trying to escape from their questions. Seeing his reaction again makes his mother and sister annoyed because they know Jillik does what they worry about. His mother scolds him by saying that if Jillik eats unbalanced food, then Jillik will get sick quickly. Hearing that, Jillik immediately looks back at them with a confident expression. Remembering he has the blessing from the god, Hid Origami, he is quite immune to illness. Therefore, he confidently says that they both don't need to worry because he won't get sick. Of course, hearing that unreasonable thing makes Ilya annoyed and asks on what basis her brother can confidently say that. Jilek grins proudly and answers that he has never been sick since he was little. Hearing that, Ilya immediately falls silent because surprised when realizing what Jilek said is true. Even though he has won the argument, in the end his parents still lecture him. And yes, again, Jilek considers his parents too noisy until he wants to go home to his house soon. Because they are still chattering about Jilek, they even forget about their dinner again. Suddenly, the rumbling stomach sound from Sarah's stomach is heard, and she innocently asks whether she can eat her food now. Hearing that question, they all are surprised because they forgot it. His grandfather apologizes to Sarah and nods, allowing it. Ilya also apologizes while smiling awkwardly, which makes Sarah pout cutely when she is angry. Seeing that Jilek, instead of surprised, he feels saved by her from his parents' lecture. So he thinks he can use Sarah as an excuse tool to change the conversation topic in the future. Because of Sarah's words earlier, Lesta as the family head starts this family dinner event, and the clinking glass sound and also their happy sound make this event run warmly and peacefully. When they sip their drinks for the food opener, they all look a bit surprised, but also puzzled when seeing the dish served for them. Ludwig becomes the first person to comment with a puzzled tone that he has never seen fish meat like this before. Seen on their plates a grilled fish meat, but different from usual, this time it looks simple. The grilled fish meat gives a crispy outer skin and soft inside. Then there is a lemon slice and also a leaf. Hearing her husband's comment, Ilya joins in asking when realizing about the fish, "Isn't this the fish that Jilek caught today?" Jilek smiles proudly and explains that this is the fish called savannah fish, even though Jilek says it as if ordinary, but actually Jilek has arranged all this because he wants to eat fish meat for his dinner no matter how. Others comment positively, like feeling the meat looks appetizing. They start using the knife and fork in their hands and start cutting, then eating the fish meat piece. They all fall silent when tasting their first bite, especially his father, who comments with a confused and puzzled tone whether this is really savannah fish, because the taste is quite different from what he knew before. Ludge joins in commenting that according to him this fish meat dish doesn't use the usual fish grilling method, because the taste feels a bit different from usual. Then Sarah also joins in commenting with her happy tone that the fish taste is very delicious. Hearing the positive comment coming out of her daughter's mouth makes Ilya surprised. She just remembers that her daughter doesn't like fish because of its fishy smell. Innocently, Sarah answers that but this fish doesn't smell fishy at all. Then Gilliam appears and explains with a happy tone while taking out Jilek's smoking magic tool that all this is because the servants use the magic tool brought by Jilek here. And with this tool, the servants can cook fish in a special way. They all are surprised seeing Jilek's new magic tool. Ludwig even comments that he has never seen a tool like that before. With a proud tone, Jilek explains that by using the tool, they can use selected wood pieces to make smoke that will grill the food. With that method, they can bring out the best taste from the food and make the food rich in taste. Ludwig is surprised when hearing his explanation and comments that Jilek made another extraordinary magic tool. With his serious tone, Ludwig asks Jilek, can Jilek sell one of this magic tool to him? Jilek makes a questioning sound when hearing the request. Suddenly, with full enthusiasm, his father stands and says that he also wants it. Jilek immediately surprised when hearing his father's enthusiastic voice. Seeing their expressions makes Jilek feel uncomfortable, especially putting on hopeful and pleading expressions to him. Deep in his heart, Jilek really wants to refuse their request, but he also knows it will be more problematic if he refuses them. Because there is no other choice, Jilek in the end accepts their request and says that he will make it and send it to them both. Hearing that, they both immediately cheer like kids getting new toys. The exhausting night for Jilek finally ends. The next day, Jilek is working as usual in his workplace. But what's different this time? Jilek looks lethargic and sighs long. He mutters with a complaining tone that his work has no progress at all. Moreover, the tiredness from last night's event still feels until now. Not long after, because it's already noon, Tristan tells his boss that he will go for lunch break. Hearing that, Jilek is a bit surprised because he didn't realize it's time for break. He then nods and mutters that he will also go out for break, remembering there is a store that makes him curious. But again, his little heart makes Jilek realize his work, which makes him try to refuse his desire and intend to finish his work first before then break. But the reality is Jilek falls silent again. The pen he holds doesn't move at all. His gaze is also empty when his mind instead flies everywhere and thinks about other things like fish walking and dancing with their legs and hands. Because his mind really can't concentrate, reluctantly Jillik puts his pen into its container and chooses to go break only. Out of his workplace and heading to the city, the market area looks crowded as usual. The crowd sound, the merchants offering their goods adorn the market. Not long after Jillik arrives at the store that has made him curious all this time, where the store looks like a man selling soup-type food and also other seafood dishes. Jillik enthusiastically orders 1 bowl of seafood tomato soup. He then looks at other dishes and becomes very enthusiastic when seeing a large crab skewer. He then adds his order by ordering the skewer. After paying, Jillik brings his snacks to the nearest table and puts it there. He smiles happily when seeing the food, and when inhaling its aroma, he comments that this food aroma is very delicious. He then eats his crab skewer first. The first bite enters his mouth, and he chews it seriously. Closing his eyes, Jillik can feel that the crab taste spreads in his mouth, besides that the seasoning used is also in a very right amount. Besides that the charcoal taste also makes the taste stronger, an extraordinary combination. Jillik keeps eating it until no meat left. After finishing with his crab skewer, now he turns to his main menu, seafood tomato soup. Seeing his large bowl and full, Jillik comments that this soup apparently has a quite large portion. Bringing the bowl to his mouth, he starts sipping the soup. The first sip enters his throat, which makes Jillik close his eyes while licking his lips full of enjoyment. The taste from the seafood seasoning, and also the sour taste from the slowly sautéed tomato, makes the taste mix perfectly. Moreover, the spicy taste from the chili makes the taste more solid. He then spoons the shrimp in his soup. Spooning into his mouth, Jillik smiles happily when the taste is really delicious. He then keeps eating the seafood meats in his soup and drinks all the broth until finished. He makes a satisfaction sound when sipping his last soup and thanks for the food. Jillik returns to his workplace with a wide smile on his face. He mutters happily that this lunch is really very delicious. On the way, suddenly there is a paper given to him. Innocently, Jillik reflexively accepts it without asking or glancing at the person. Realizing that makes Jillik panic himself because he lowered his guard until accepting the paper just like that. It turns out the paper is a promotional flyer paper given by the female employee there. Because he has already accepted it, Jillik doesn't bother and thinks that the flyer is just a boring propaganda or other ad. When he is about to crumple the paper and throw it away, accidentally Jillik sees part of the picture from the flyer, which makes him curious. With curiosity, he opens the flyer paper again, and it looks like it's an orchestra concert promotional poster, an event that unexpectedly exists in this fantasy world. Behind the performance stage, people in suits and stunning gowns are seen preparing themselves to perform on the main stage. They all then walk together towards the main stage, but one of them seems to be having a problem. She keeps grumbling about her high heels that are too high and make her ankles hurt. She also regrets not changing her high heels when she was still at home before. Not long after, her colleague calls the blonde-haired woman by her name, namely Catalina. Her colleague reminds her to get ready soon, or they will be left behind. Hearing that, Catalina panics and immediately follows them to the main stage. The light in the main stage room starts to dim and focuses towards the main stage. The audience becomes silent, and only the sound of the orchestra players preparing is heard. Silence is not empty, but full of anticipation. The audience's gazes are fixed on the main stage, including Jillik, who is among the audience. The orchestra players have sat in their respective places. The shine of the wooden musical instruments and metal strings reflects the stage light elegantly. Some musicians make small final movements, adjusting positions, gripping bows steadily. In the middle, the conductor stands tall. His figure becomes the axis of all attention. When the baton is raised, the atmosphere changes. But what makes him more amazed and interested is the instrument played by the musicians that looks like a combination of several instruments. Taking one example of a musical instrument that looks strange to him comes from an instrument like a large and circular trumpet, but has various pipes that are already similar to unclear government fund flow pipes. Seeing how complex the instrument pipes are reminds Jillik about magic circuits. After a while, thinking, Jillik immediately surprised when getting an idea where he just remembers that there is no rule that says magic circuits must be on a flat surface. If he bends and overlays it with a cooling magic circuit similar to the instrument concept, then most likely his idea will succeed. Realizing this, Jillik panics himself. His body trembles in panic. He really wants to go to his workplace soon because he is afraid this idea will disappear from his head. Finally, After the concert finishes, Jillik rushes to his workplace and immediately makes progress in his work. Time passes and the sun starts to set. Rouge says goodbye to her boss because going home first. Jillik nods and thanks for her hard work. He stares at his blueprint proudly because finally he gets progress in his work on the cooling layer of his refrigerator magic tool. Suddenly Tristan comes with a wide smile on his face. He then invites his boss to dinner together. Seeing that Jillik feels there is a hidden agenda, with a disbelieving tone he asks, "Didn't Tristan previously say that going with 2 men is a waste at that time?" Cold sweat pours on his face, but Tristan acts innocent and pretends to forget. Because seeing his reaction, Jillik immediately puts on his jacket and says that he will go home. Hearing that, Tristan immediately panics. With quick movement, he spreads his arms and blocks Jillik while asking him to wait. Tristan looks hesitant to explain his situation. Before then, with a proud face, he says that currently he has no money. Therefore, he asks his boss to treat him to eat. Hearing that, Jillik freezes there, between surprised and also disbelieving. But then both feelings change to annoyed. He asks that he is sure that he has paid Tristan decently according to worker standards, right? Tristan's body immediately freezes, and with a panicked tone, he explains that he spent his money to buy a gift for a girl he likes in the cabaret club. Cabaret itself is a stage entertainment show like singing, dancing, comedy, and others. But different from other shows, cabaret has its own characteristic where the atmosphere feels closer to each other, where the audience is close to the stage. The event feels light and free compared to classical theater. Hearing such a reason makes Jillik more annoyed and immediately says goodbye to go. Tristan more panics until he hugs Jillik's leg while apologizing and begging to be bought expensive food. He also has no shame to put on a pleading for mercy expression and asks his boss to consider this as an act of helping his poor employee. Moreover, he has never eaten with Jillik before. Hearing that makes Jillik a bit softened towards him. Not softened because pity, but he knows that taking care of his subordinate is also the duty of a boss like him. In the end, Jillik fulfills his request and goes to the city with Tristan. Tristan becomes enthusiastic and tells his boss that he wants to eat yakiniku meat from Maigio restaurant. Jillik, without beating around the bush, immediately refuses it and explains that he has eaten it before. Hearing that, Tristan is extremely surprised. He then asks with whom his antisocial boss ate yakiniku, maybe with someone important to Jillik. Innocently, Jillik answers that of course with himself. Tristan falls silent. With a confused tone he mutters that he heard that yakiniku eating session is a session where everyone can eat relaxed and happy. But his antisocial boss makes him more confused with his answer just now. Because his desire is refused, Tristan says that he will follow to the restaurant that Jillik will choose tonight. Hearing that, Jillik smiles and continues walking. On the way to the restaurant he is heading to, suddenly Jillik sees the sign of a magic tool store that sells artifacts. Innocently, he apologizes to Tristan and invites him to stop at the store for a while. Hearing that, Tristan immediately puts on a hard refusal face expression towards his invitation. With an unwilling tone he asks whether they can cancel the intention to enter the artifact store, because Jillik always spends a very long time in the store. Before finishing his words, Tristan is surprised when realizing Jillik ignores him and has walked into the store. In the end, Tristan has no choice but to follow his boss to enter to be treated to eat. The creaking door open sound is heard when they enter. There are various magic tools being sold, from ordinary magic tools to artifacts. There are equipments like armor, helmets, gloves, to complete weapons. But the equipments are not like usual, because the equipments have a style that can give a scary aura to people who see it. For example, the helmet made from animal skull complete with its horns and sharp accessories along the chin and ears. Seeing that, Tristan with a scared face expression hides behind Jillik while commenting that no matter how many times he comes to this store, the store guard still makes him shiver in fear. On the other hand, Jillik looks relaxed, and proudly he explains that that's what ordinary people feel from a man who is a cursed artifact maniac. Jillik then approaches the scary clothed store guard, which turns out to be a cursed artifact, and greets him casually. Even the guard greets him back casually, knowing Jillik is a customer who often comes to this store. Seeing how they both can greet each other casually makes Tristan think that all people who like artifacts have deviant brains. Entering the store deeper, Tristan looks at the items there and their prices displayed. He then comments with an uncomfortable tone that he never stops being surprised no matter how many times coming to this store when seeing the very expensive artifact prices. Hearing Tristan's comment, A thick, bearded and short-bodied man appears and answers that of course artifacts are expensive, because artifacts are still artifacts. No matter useful or not even like trash, the artifacts are still expensive because they can't be produced again with the knowledge or magic technology of this era. The man is named Guan, the owner of the artifact store named Aldius. Hearing the explanation, Tristan only puts on an understanding expression even though confused. On the other hand, Jillik nods in agreement with the store owner. Turning his body, Guan comments that apparently the one coming to his store is Jillik again. The last time Jillik came to his store was 3 days ago. Hearing that comment, Jillik answers that it's no problem, right? Because according to him, artifacts are something that can be seen once in his lifetime. Jillik then asks, isn't there a new artifact that just arrived at this store, right? Guan then brings a large box and puts it on his display case. He nods and says that this artifact might be an artifact that Jillik might like. With a serious face, Jillik asks the store owner to show it. Guan then opens the large box and takes out a shiny glass, or more precisely a chalice. Jillik looks not too surprised but still interested. He then comments that the artifact doesn't have any ornaments or decorations attached to the chalice. Moreover, its size that can be said quite small. Therefore, from outside, the chalice looks like an ordinary chalice. He then asks what it can do or the use of the artifact. Guan casually asks Jillik to see it himself. He then says one word, gush or gush out. Not long after, from inside the clean chalice that has nothing inside it, initially small amount of water appears from inside before then quickly filling the chalice. What's more interesting, the water is not just ordinary water, but water that keeps releasing bubbles. Seeing that, Jillik is very surprised and asks with a disbelieving tone whether the artifact can produce soda water. Guan nods and pours the soda water into a glass while explaining that this artifact is called Bubble Cup. Soda water itself in this world is something rare, besides that there is a mysterious spring source that can produce soda water. And with that method, people in this world can get soda water. Because of that, also soda water becomes something rare and becomes something that individuals can't enjoy easily. Guan then gives the soda water glass to Jillik to taste. When Jillik sips the soda water and puts the glass on the display case, with a serious and interested expression, he asks the price. Hearing that, Tristan with a surprised and also puzzled tone asks whether his boss is serious about buying it. On the other hand, Guan smiles happily and with a serious tone answers that the price is 30 million. Without thinking long, Jillik immediately agrees to the price. With a happy smile on his face, Jillik starts making a written check there. On the other hand, Tristan looks very surprised, until making him look very crazy. He even while shouting like crazy because so surprised asks his boss's sanity for buying an artifact that has an 8-digit price, because with that much price Jillik can build a new house in the capital. Jillik looks a bit uncomfortable with Tristan's overreaction. He then explains that with only 30 million price, he can make a soda drink with alcoholic drink type, and that's more than enough to make the price worth it. Moreover, with this artifact, he can also open a drink bar, and there are still many more uses using the artifact. Hearing Jillik's explanation makes Guan laugh out loud and comments that it seems Jillik can see the true use of this artifact. He then wipes the chalice and gives it to Jillik. On the other hand, Tristan is seen going crazy because seeing his boss buy an expensive item in front of him who has no money. He even protests to his own boss for being heartless doing that in front of his employee who is running out of money. Jillik with his coldness answers that he doesn't care and what happened has happened. While writing his check money, Jillik admits that it feels very happy when he doesn't need to think about anything when doing large amount transactions like this. And this feeling he won't get when he has a wife or descendants. What there is instead is protest words from the wife like, instead of buying things like this, better save it for the future. And this is one of the advantages of staying single or alone, of freedom. But for Jillik himself, freedom comes with responsibility too, where he has to prepare everything that supports him during living alone and make a very mature plan for living alone in the future. After his check money is finished and getting the chalice, Jillik puts it into his suitcase. Getting the item he got, Jillik innocently says that he will go home. At the same time, Tristan also invites him to dinner like the initial plan. But when hearing Jillik's words just now makes Tristan surprised and reminds Jillik again about his promise to treat him tonight. Jillik innocently answers that he can't possibly bring an artifact worth 30 million everywhere like this. Hearing that with a disbelieving and disappointed tone and expression, Tristan guesses that even though his boss says like that, but actually his boss just wants to try the artifact soon, right? Jillik smiles while walking out of the store and answers that he can't deny that. He also apologizes to Tristan for canceling his dinner event and invites him to do it another time. Jillik casually leaves the store, leaving Tristan there in a limp state because he hasn't had dinner. Guan, who is there, comments that no matter how handsome and rich Jillik is, according to him it will be difficult for Jillik to marry someone with his habits like that. Beside him, the limp Tristan can only nod in agreement with the store owner. When arriving home, Jillik immediately takes out the artifact he bought and puts it on the table. He, with an admiring and happy gaze, assesses the appearance of the artifact chalice. He comments that from how the chalice shines, it's clearly visible that it's an artifact. Moreover, the chalice is in a still good condition. Because of curiosity, he starts tapping the chalice gently to know the material that builds it. But what makes him feel happy is because this time he can get soda water whenever he wants. Getting an idea how to enjoy this soda water, Jillik chooses to make a simple mixed drink type highball. Pulling the ice-making part from his maid refrigerator, Jillik smiles widely when finding ice bars quickly using his magic tool. Because still in large bar form, Jillik takes a knife and hammer to cut it. He really enjoys the drink-making process, even to the point he praises the ice pieces that according to him look perfect. After cutting the ice into small parts that fit into the tall glass, he then takes a bottle of alcoholic drink and starts pouring it into the glass. But he doesn't pour it until full, but only a third of the glass size. He then stirs it to make the alcoholic drink spread evenly and become cold. After that, he then takes his artifact chalice and starts saying the keyword gush, or gush out. Immediately, the chalice is filled with soda water that makes Jillik's eyes sparkle because happy. He then pours the soda water into the glass earlier and stirs it slowly again. Thus becomes a light alcoholic drink. Because of his happy feeling and also impatient, Jillik immediately sips it directly. The clinking sound from the ice blocks colliding gives a sound that makes Jillik feel calm and also refreshing. But because this is soda water, the piercing sensation from the soda makes Jillik surprised and stops his drinking. Even though his satisfied feeling he still feels. Not stopping there, Jillik gets a new idea to enjoy the perfect food to accompany his highball-type drink. A few minutes later, Jillik puts a plate of his made food, namely crispy fried chicken meat, or carriage. With the fried chicken meat that still releases hot smoke, Jillik uses his fork and skewers one of them, then eats it. The crispy taste, melting because of the meat fat, and also the hot sensation that just comes out unites perfectly and makes him addicted. He smiles happily because his seasoning absorbs perfectly, especially on the ginger and garlic that absorb perfectly. Taking a lemon slice and squeezing it on top of his fried chicken meat, he then eats it again. Now the lemon squeeze taste makes him feel a fresh taste after the fat coming out from the meat. He then takes his highball drink and sips it after eating his fried chicken meat. He shouts satisfied with all that. Staring at the artifact chalice in his hand, he feels proud of himself because now he can feel luxury alone with a price equivalent to 30 million. That amount of money is the result of his hard work to live alone since he was little. And now, after going through quite long hard work and patience, now he achieves his dream. He smiles and mutters that he wants to praise himself who has worked hard all this time. Besides that, he also remembers that many things have happened today. He got a great lunch, then went to the orchestra theater that made him get an idea in developing magic circuits. Then he got a very useful artifact, only with 30 million price. Realizing all these events, many good things happen, makes Jillik enthusiastic and happy. He raises his chalice while shouting that today is an extraordinary day. Because feeling happy, Jillik hums cheerfully while thinking about his future plans. He also plans to make spritzer after he finishes his highball. Spritzer itself is a light drink mixed with soda water, but the focus is not on alcoholic drinks only, but the light and fresh taste. In the end, Jillik keeps humming cheerfully while he continues to enjoy his drink. On the other hand, a woman is seen just coming home at night and opening her house door, which is in a dark state. When she greets that she has come home, no one answers because she lives alone. Her face looks very lethargic, and her hair also looks messy. Seeing the room in her house so dark, her already tired mind now more tired and starts to lose her spirit. But the woman immediately slaps her own cheek to make herself aware and back enthusiastic because she still has another task, namely focus on her music practice. The woman is named Catalina McClare. She is the woman who previously appeared during the orchestra theater event. She has a dream to work in the music world. To achieve her dream, she even left her family residence and now lives alone in the capital since then. by burning her laziness with emotion. She affirms to herself that she won't be able to survive in the music world if she feels solitude. She then removes her high heels that she complained about before her orchestra show. There is a bruise mark right on the back of her foot that makes her forced to stand on tiptoe due to her too high heels. As a result, while grumbling annoyed, Catalina has to crawl into her house while grumbling at her own high heels and promises not to use it again. Entering her own room and turning on the light, Catalina freezes there when seeing the view. The room full and messy with books and also clothes scattered everywhere. She also admits that her room is really chaotic like a broken ship. Remembering since she was little, she always focused on practicing music and handed over to her servants to take care of her room's tidiness. But this time she feels a significant difference after she lives alone. Even though reluctantly, Catalina knows that she has to clean her room this time, and there should be no more excuses. And yes, Catalina ends up breaking her own words and immediately lies on her sofa, while saying with a lazy tone that maybe another time. She is really drained out, both energy, mind, and also her sanity after all the things she experienced today. She even wants to forget everything that makes her mind heavy and fall asleep on the sofa. She then closes her eyes trying to sleep, but instead of falling asleep, she instead more thinks about today's events that make her immediately wake up from her sleep and her emotions overflow. Because frustrated, she chooses to eat something first before sleep. Taking out food from her refrigerator, she only finds food that has rotted and also vegetables that have started to dry and almost still edible. Just seeing it has made Catalina lose her appetite and decide to skip her dinner. She apologizes to the cooking ingredients she stored in her refrigerator and realizes that food ingredients stored in the refrigerator apparently can't last forever. Her tone then changes from accepting the fact to annoyed when seeing the size of the refrigerator that is large. She feels that the refrigerator size can be made smaller, so it doesn't take much space. Since she bought the magic tool belonging to the craftsman named Jillik Rulin, she often sends requests for improvisation on his magic tool, but until now there is no change at all in the market about his product. Even so, she has no intention to stop her complaints and will continue to send them until there is a change. Because there is no use thinking about that, Catalina finally chooses to practice violin to spend her time. She returns to her room and uses a cube-shaped magic tool, which is a magic tool to make her room soundproof, so no sound comes out of her room. That also helps not to disturb her neighbors, considering she lives in a shared living house, or more known now as apartment. Taking her violin from her bag and putting the note paper on her table, she is ready to practice. Just the bow she holds ready to be rubbed, Catalina hears a humming sound from the wall beside her. Hearing that, Catalina feels disturbed by the humming sound. That happens because the occupant beside her doesn't use a sound-dampening magic tool. Catalina tries to affirm to herself not to be distracted by the sound, but anyway, the man's humming sound is still heard clearly until disturbing her concentration. Because her emotion is already at the edge of her head, Catalina, without hesitation, immediately kicks her wall. And yes, ends with Catalina's foot that loses and makes her curl up on the floor because of the pain in her own foot. While curling up in pain, her mouth doesn't stop cursing at the man. But even though she has sacrificed her foot, the humming sound doesn't stop at all, which reignites Catalina's emotion and shouts at the wall, hoping her voice is heard entering, and asks him with an emotional tone to use the sound-dampening magic tool if he wants to hum. And yes, without Catalina realizing, she has used the sound-dampening magic tool, so everything she does, like chattering, kicking the wall, will never reach her neighbor. In the next day, Jillik goes to work as usual in the morning. But Jillik looks a bit surprised when seeing the quite crowded market today. He thinks to have breakfast at the cafe he often visits. But because the cafe also has many people, he becomes confused to find another place for breakfast that he can enjoy alone. Not long after walking looking for a food store, Jillik finds a cafe that has a different house design from other houses. The store gives an elegant impression, similar to the building model from Jillik's previous life. Even when he peeks inside from behind the window, he is quite surprised with the style inside the room that is really elegant. He never knows about a cafe like this always opens on the street he passes. Opening the door, the bell sound is heard indicating a customer enters. Inside there, a man with an appearance like a bartender is seen standing and welcoming Jillik with a smile. He also invites him to sit anywhere Jillik wants because it's still empty. Jillik is really satisfied with the interior of the cafe room that gives a calm impression. He then takes the menu list and intends to order one breakfast set. When he is looking at the menu list for his drink, Jillik hears the sound of something rough being ground. But the sound is heard very distinctive. Not long after, a familiar aroma is smelled by Jillik, which makes him immediately stand and call the cafe owner. He then asks with a guessing tone whether maybe that is coffee beans. Hearing Jillik, who can guess, that makes the cafe owner surprised but happy. He asks whether Jillik knows about coffee. Jillik nods and answers that he once drank it once in the past. Coffee itself indeed exists in this world, but unlike in his previous life, coffee here is still not sold widely. He also got coffee beans that happened to be sold in the capital, and bought them, then processed them himself. Even though the taste is quite different from the coffee taste he remembers in his previous life, but there is still a satisfied feeling inside him. Jillik now moves his seat to the table near the cafe owner, who is grinding coffee. The cafe owner explains that when he was traveling in the past, he was once given coffee by someone and drank it. Since then, he can't forget the taste of that coffee until now. Since then, he makes coffee only as his hobby when opening his cafe like now. With a sad tone and sighing softly, he comments again that unfortunately the response from the customers who have tasted his coffee always gives a non-positive response. Therefore, he can only practice continuously. Hearing that, Jillik smiles elegantly and comments that not many people can understand the taste of coffee just by drinking once. Far from his heart, Jillik knows that people in this world don't have the habit to enjoy a drink, so it's natural if drinks like coffee are not so popular. While smiling, friendly, challenging, Jillik asks the cafe owner whether he can order one morning breakfast set with coffee as his drink. Hearing that makes the cafe owner smile happily and nod agreeing, while saying that he will prepare it soon. The cafe owner makes coffee first. He takes out a coffee brewing tool named siphon coffee maker, or more often known as vacuum coffee, which has physics principle as the brewing process and filtering the grounds. The restaurant owner pours hot water into a glass shaped like a chemistry flask. After filled, he then lights the fire wick that is already attached below it and lets the glass filled with water boil. At the same time, he takes another glass shaped like a tube with the other tube end smaller below it and attaches a filter inside it. After attached, he then puts the coffee powder into the tube glass. He then puts the tube-shaped glass into the glass that contains boiling water and closes the top of the tube glass. With that, physics reaction happens where the boiling water releases steam and pushes the water to rise through the small tube that enters the boiling water until entering the tube glass above it. With that, now the coffee is soaked in hot water. After waiting for a while, the cafe owner opens the tube glass lid and stirs the coffee while turning off his fire wick. Along with the temperature of the glass below becoming cold, the water slowly descends through the same pipe. Because there is a filter inside it, the coffee grounds don't descend to the glass below it, and the coffee is ready. He removes the glass part that is already filled with coffee water and pours it into a glass. He then serves the coffee to Jillik. Jillik, with a smile on his face, accepts the coffee. He, while closing his eyes, inhales the aroma of the freshly cooked coffee. He really likes its distinctive aroma. As a drink and food connoisseur, he knows the big difference between the cafe owner's made coffee with his made coffee that can be considered as his coffee. The cafe owner's made coffee has a beautiful color, and from the aroma alone there is no sour taste at all. Sipping his coffee, Jillik smiles satisfied and says that the coffee taste is very delicious. Hearing that makes the cafe owner smile and thank for his praise. He also explains that he feels a bit worried about him, who will serve coffee for customers who already know how coffee tastes. Hearing that, Jillik comments again with his happy tone that this cafe owner doesn't need to worry about that, because he also says as is. After preparing one morning breakfast set and serving it to Jillik, the cafe owner says that he wants to know about Jillik as a fellow coffee connoisseur like him. Moreover, very few people can enjoy coffee. He then asks Jillik's name and introduces himself as Rondell. While smiling happily, Jillik introduces himself. Hearing Jillik's name makes Rondell freeze for a moment because surprised. Then he, with a slightly disbelieving tone, asks again to confirm whether maybe this Jillik is a magic tool craftsman. Jillik, with his flat expression, nods, confirming it. Hearing that, Rondell smiles widely and happily says that it's an honor to meet a famous magic tool craftsman like Jillik here. Jillik, who is not used to praise like that, with a somewhat uncomfortable tone, asks Rondell to stop praising him because he is not a big figure like that. Not long after, the bell sound is heard again, showing there is another customer coming. A bespectacled old man with a sturdy body is seen. Recognizing who the old man is, Rondell greets him by calling his name Noid. Noid, while smiling, greets Rondell and calls him with Master Call. He says that it's been a long time he hasn't met Rondell again. Today he finally gets a long day off from his master. While laughing softly, Rondell asks him, being a head servant is a heavy job, right? Noid can only laugh as his reply. When he walks towards the table near Rondell, he accidentally sees Jillik, who orders coffee. Seeing that, he greets Jillik and comments that it's very rare there is someone else who orders coffee besides him in this cafe. Hearing that, Jillik only smiles and Noid sits next to Jillik and orders the same coffee as Jillik. That indicates Jillik is as experienced as someone experienced in taste like Noid, and that makes Jillik feel proud of himself. After a breakfast that feels so elegant and full of pride, Jillik arrives at his workplace. He greets Tristan with a proud smile on his face, which is something Jillik rarely does. Seeing the smile, Tristan doesn't answer it, just silent while staring at him with an envious gaze. Seeing the envious gaze from Tristan makes Jillik also silent and asks innocently, "What's wrong?" Tristan, who still feels envious and disappointed with last night's incident where he was left by Jillik after buying the artifact, with his envious tone he asks, "This boss is in a good mood today, huh?" Hearing that, Jillik immediately smiles widely and proudly nods. As if wanting to provoke Tristan, he offers him whether Tristan wants to know the reason he has a good mood today. Tristan, with an envious and annoyed tone and gaze, immediately refuses it. But Jillik doesn't care and starts telling about what he experienced last night after buying the artifact and enjoying the night cheerfully while drinking, and also enjoying the morning with delicious coffee in a good cafe. Hearing all that makes Tristan become crazy again, as if like a possessed person who is being purified. Not long after, Rogue comes, and seeing the commotion, she comes and calms Tristan. She explains that Jillik is that type of person, and now is also not the time to discuss that. She then takes out a paper and gives it to Jillik while explaining there is a request letter. Hearing that, he accepts the paper and asks who the sender is. Rogue, while smiling widely, answers that the letter is from Catalina. Hearing that, immediately they both freeze and Jillik, his hand reflexively crumples the letter. But instead of emotion, Tristan shouts proudly, because finally comes the figure of Catalina, the complainer who can destroy his boss's mood. On the other hand, Jillik really loses his good mood earlier. While complaining with an annoyed tone, he comments that this mysterious woman named Catalina really often sends complaint letters, to the point he guesses whether this woman has no job. Hearing that, Rogue explains that even so, this Catalina has bought all Jillik's made products all this time. Hearing that makes Tristan envious again, because mentioning about money. He, with his envious tone, comments that it seems the woman enjoys her life with that money. Jillik sighs long and comments that he doesn't care whether this Catalina buys all his made products or not, because complaints are still complaints. While reading the previous complaint papers from Catalina, Rogue comments that according to her understanding, this Catalina always sends complaints using good language and doesn't attack or include bad complaints about their products. Besides that, she also finds that this Catalina always gives complaints based on a woman's point of view and how not easy to use their products in daily life. Hearing that, Jillik also comments that he admits this Catalina writes inputs and also requests that he never realizes, but he is sure around 90% of all her complaints are her own selfishness. Rogue immediately gives a safe answer, while smiling that maybe her boss is right. Tristan then comments that this Catalina is brave to write all those complaints even though she herself is not a magic tool craftsman. Even according to him, it's very difficult to make a more compact magic tool from the current condition. Jillik nods in agreement with Tristan and explains that there is no more useless thing that they can remove from their magic tool now. They even have reduced the number of unneeded functions to the limit point, and this is the final result. With an encouraging tone, Rogue says that isn't that their duty as magic tool craftsmen to fulfill the customer's desires and realize them. Hearing that makes Jillik annoyed and immediately crumples the paper, then throws it into the trash, while saying that he doesn't care at all and he has no obligation to fulfill it. Seeing that, they both simultaneously make their surprised sound. Again, Jillik explains to them that the reason he makes magic tools is none other than just to make his own life easier. On the other hand, in the orchestra training room, the musicians practice diligently under the guidance of the conductor. After the practice finishes, the conductor stops their practice and thanks for the musicians' hard work. Other musicians look relaxed and even invite other musicians to eat together after this. But the calm atmosphere doesn't apply to Catalina. She looks very pressured and even looks nauseous due to her pressure. She mutters sadly that today's rehearsal is very bad, especially on her performance. With despair, Catalina intends to immediately go and practice in her room more diligently before the next orchestra event is held. When about to go, her step is stopped by the conductor named Eldova by asking time with her to talk. Hearing Eldova's voice makes Catalina panic to death because she thinks the conductor will scold her again due to her bad performance during the rehearsal. Eldova then gives a sheet of instrument paper to Catalina while explaining that from the beginning Catalina always shows interest in doing music composition. Accepting the paper, Catalina nods, confirming it. Eldova then explains that he wants a music composition for their next concert that comes from the original made by one of their orchestra members. Usually it's always him who makes it, but he is currently full with other works. Hearing the opportunity, Catalina looks very enthusiastic and guesses whether the conductor wants to hand over the music composition to her alone. Eldova shakes his head and explains that he has discussed this with other orchestra members, but one of their composition results that is accepted will be used for their next orchestra concert. Because that's the rule. Therefore, according to him, the more choices the better, and he offers Catalina to participate in giving her composition result. Catalina enthusiastically accepts the offer and even begs to let her join. Hearing that, Eldova smiles and explains that the deadline is 1 week, and he wants Catalina to finish one her-made music composition that, according to Catalina, can be proud of. Eldova's smile then changes to a warning and explains again that he knows it's difficult to make music composition and practice at the same time, but he asks Catalina to still maintain her daily practice for their next performance. Hearing that, Catalina's face expression looks tense again and feels nauseous when reminded again about her practice that apparently Eldova realizes her bad performance. Even though she doesn't know whether she can do two exhausting things at the same time between practicing violin and also doing music composition. But even so, she knows opportunities like this won't know when will appear again. Therefore, she will do her best to do both and start burning back the ember fire of spirit that is dimmed inside her. But reality is cruel. In her room, Catalina shouts like crazy when she has difficulty thinking about anything about her music composition idea. She realizes that this is already 6 days past, and she still doesn't get any idea for her music composition. And during that time, there is no progress at all. Worse, now it's already night, and she still hasn't finished her daily practice. Really bad. With her pale expression, Catalina still tries not to give up and asks herself to calm down. She plans to skip dinner and stay up to finish both. While holding the violin in her hand, she is sure she can make the next melody based on her initial note. When focusing, again the humming sound from Jillik seeps back into Catalina's room. Catalina becomes annoyed with his humming. But when heard in more detail, the humming from Jillik, Catalina feels confused and puzzled when realizing his humming has a good rhythm for music composition. From initially annoyed, now becomes enjoying, and she listens to it all night. When midnight arrives, Catalina looks very proud and raises the stack of melody note papers that she succeeded in making. With her proud tone, she says that she succeeded in doing it, and she also didn't expect it to be very extraordinary from what she imagined. Even though deep inside her she feels disappointed too, because this result comes from listening to her neighbors humming too, and worse, without asking permission at all. She also knows her action is included in plagiarism violation, since little Catalina always listens to humming from her neighbors with various music types. But from all the music hummed by her neighbors, there is not one of them that she knows what music it is. Because of that thinking, Catalina guesses maybe her current neighbor is a famous music composer. Because her conscience firmly refuses her current result. In the end, Catalina refuses her first melody note paper and decides to make again with her own original result. The next day, Catalina comes to her practice place in a hurry and apologizes to Eldova for coming late. Eldova smiles and explains that everyone still hasn't come here, so Catalina doesn't need to hurry. He then changes the topic by asking that today is the deadline to submit her music composition result and whether Catalina has finished it. Catalina, with a tone that is still broken due to running in a hurry, nods and answers that she will give it now. Due to the hurry, her violin bag falls, which makes her melody note papers scattered on the floor. Eldova then enthusiastically helps to pick it up and starts checking it. Remembering Catalina always shows interest in doing music composition, so he quite hopes a lot. But Eldova's face expression changes to silent and looks a bit confused when reading it. Catalina looks so tense and nervous when seeing the conductor's expression. Eldova then opens the next paper sheet, and a bit surprised and confused when realizing there is another melody note paper inserted there. Realizing that, Catalina becomes very panicked because she knows that one of the melody note papers is the result from copying her neighbor's humming. Due to the haste when leaving, she accidentally also put the copying result paper into her violin bag. When Catalina is about to snatch it from the conductor's hand, suddenly Eldova's hand extends quickly and stops Catalina. Catalina is surprised with his action, and Eldova is seen silent with his surprised expression. His face and eyes immediately sparkle admiring when reading her second melody note paper and comments that this is very extraordinary. Even though the first melody note paper seems boring, but the second melody note paper has a different impression, not only elegant but also innovative. Even the music is also very good. Hearing that, Catalina freezes there between happy and also sad when hearing praise, and also insult towards her own original made that is called boring. Eldova also explains enthusiastically that just in case he will show this Catalina's made melody note paper to his manager and also all other orchestra members. Even so, he is sure everyone will agree to choose Catalina's made as material for their next performance. Eldova praises Catalina's hard work. The praise is like a hard lightning strike hitting Catalina. She thanks for his praise with an awkward tone. She doesn't believe the copying result of her neighbor's humming will be chosen by the conductor. The orchestra performance time arrives. Coincidentally, Jillik also present and watches the performance. When their first performance finishes, the audience's applause fills the theater room magnificently. Jillik admits that he comes back here to watch this orchestra show because hearing it directly turns out better than hearing the recording. The conductor then tells the audience that their next performance is one of the new music made by one of their members, and he hopes the audience can enjoy it. The music flow starts to be played. Hearing the first flow alone makes Jillik immediately furrow his brow confused. He feels that this music is very similar to the song he always sings in his previous life. Without Jillik realizing, Catalina is seen playing her violin with a pale face, afraid if this copying music is known by her neighbor. But Jillik smiles and closes his eyes. He thinks that if heard in more detail, the sound from this music is different from the song he often sings, and this music is still good as it is. The next day, Catalina is seen praised by other musicians because succeeded in making a very good music composition. Praise keeps coming endlessly to Catalina. Even so, Catalina feels uneasy and only thanks awkwardly. Not long after, Eldova comes and calls Catalina. He introduces a man beside him to Catalina, that the man is a manager from the theater they often use, and the man is named Marco Montesino. Hearing that, Catalina introduces herself elegantly to Marco and thinks this is a quite serious situation. Marco then, while smiling, expresses that right when a young and talented person does their first debut always makes him feel excited. He also thanks Catalina because thanks to her composition makes his theater get full audience seats. He also wants this momentum to continue. Hearing that makes Catalina ask confused what he means. With an enthusiastic tone, Marco offers Catalina to be the person who does music composition for their next show. He knows that this will be difficult to make music composition reach that level, but he believes in Catalina that she can do it. After that heavy conversation, Marco goes, leaving them both. Suddenly, Eldova turns to Catalina while smiling, pressing, and says that Catalina can do it right. With full pressure and stutter, Catalina agrees, even though in her heart she screams panic. In her house, Catalina is really panicked and also restless. She is confused what to do to meet their expectations. Moreover, she also knows her own hard work result instead called boring by the conductor. That alone has shown she has no talent. Because there is no other choice, Catalina uses the way she hates the most. Yes, eavesdropping on her neighbor, aka Jillik, to hum. Now eavesdropping becomes her daily after coming home from practice, until finally Jillik hums again, which makes Catalina happy. But one day, Jillik hums at a time that is not right with Catalina, where she is not intending to make music composition and is practicing violin, which immediately makes her annoyed. Catalina intends to give up making music composition today too, but she also knows that she doesn't know when her neighbor will hum again. Because of that doubt, finally Catalina has no other choice but to take a big risk. And yes, she takes a big risk by eavesdropping from the front door of her neighbor's house. But unluckily, when she is eavesdropping from the front of her neighbor's house door with knee position on the floor, the humming sound suddenly disappears. Catalina feels puzzled because a few moments ago she could still listen to his humming, but this time suddenly stops. When she mutters to herself and asks her neighbor to hum again, suddenly her neighbor's door opens a little and immediately makes Catalina's forehead bump, which immediately makes her weird sound. Catalina sits on the floor while feeling pain on her forehead, and their Jillik comes out and meets Catalina with a position sitting on the floor.